Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto turns his back on Konoha part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Naruto was, for a lack of a better word, fucking sick of everything. Everything was building up and a few thoughts had been going through his head. He found himself thinking about a very important topic for anyone in his situation. That was loyalty, not in just the sense of his loyalty, but loyalty on a whole basis. His and theirs. He was currently sitting in his old rundown apartment that had been vandalized and desecrated on the outside so many times. He remembered how his day went, and it wasn't good. He had fulfilled his promise to her and brought back him, and what did he get from it? Ha! It was like his childhood all over again. He was brought back to being the demon, the one who was to blame. Everyone took his side, save for a few. He remembered it very clearly indeed. Flashback start. Naruto found himself staring up at the white room, watching the ceiling fan spin and spin, ignoring his thoughts about what happened at the Valley of the End. He was in the hospital. He looked down to see the mark where Sasuke's Chidori hit him. It didn't leave a scar though. He had always had that insane and ridiculous healing factor of his, so he knew he would be fine. He didn't know if he could say the same for Sasuke though. He did hit him with a Rasengan that was enhanced with the Kyuubi's chakra, so it was reasonable that he did do quite a bit of damage to the boy. However, nothing could prepare him for what would transpire on this day, and it would change him forever. With no going back whatsoever, he would have to make a choice. One that would be his hardest to date. Suddenly the door opened, and in walked Shizen. She was instantly happy to see him awake. He smiled at seeing the Hokage's assistant. "Naruto, how are you?" she quickly asked, clearly worried. He chuckled a bit, and sat up a bit more. "A bit sore, but nonetheless I'm good," he said. She sighed and nodded, then she sat down. "Tsunade was worried like crazy after seeing you in your previous condition. You look to be fairly recovered. So I will get you released. You just have to take it easy for a few days," she said. He nodded and thanked her. She quickly walked out of the room. It was a few minutes later, and she returned and smiled. "You're free to leave the hospital, just remember what I said," she said. He nodded and stood up out of the bed. He noticed his clothes were on the nightstand by it, so he quickly took them and walked into the nearby bathroom. A few moments later he walked out in his normal orange jumpsuit. He noticed Shizen had already left. He knew she had duties that needed to be taken care of. So he quickly walked out of the hospital, not thinking at all about what this day would bring and the consequences it would have on the world he knew. Before he knew it, he was already walking along the streets of his village when he heard a voice behind him. He instantly knew who it was. However, he knew she wasn't happy, but he didn't know why though. "Hey you!" It was Sakura. He turned and looked at her in confusion. Why was she looking at him like that? "Sakura? What's wrong?" he asked quickly. Her scowl seemed to worsen as she heard him. "What's wrong? You nearly killed Sasuke," she screeched angrily. His expression changed from confusion to annoyed quickly. She was the one who asked him to bring him back in the first place, and he was trying to kill him too. So how was he not supposed to fight back with equal force and not risk dying? "Why are you being like this? I brought him back like you begged me to, and now you're blaming me for nearly killing him? Last time I checked he was coming at me with the Chidori as well," he retorted dryly. She seemed to falter a bit, however her face contorted back to rage. However, before she could speak up, another voice came into the fray. "Even so, Naruto, you lost control of the Kyuubi and used the Rasengan at quite a close range. Not to mention the Kyuubi's chakra strengthening its power." It was Kakashi. He turned to his sensei and glared. This was starting to turn into a real shitstorm for him. "So you're siding with her? You say that I lost control of the Kyuubi. While that is true, don't forget the fact that Sasuke was using the curse mark he got from Orochimaru. I had no choice in the matter. It was a simple flip of a coin to me. Either risk it and have a chance of being able to match him, or staying calm and most definitely going in there without any sort of power-up, which would have been suicidal," he said quickly. He was starting to feel the Kyuubi trying to come out. He needed to get away from them quickly before he blew up. "I thought you of all people would take my side, Kakashi, but no. You're blind and failed to see past the fact that just because I lost control, that I'm in the wrong. You know what's also funny? I knew you liked Sasuke better. I mean, you straight up ditched me to train him and her for the Chunin exams," he roared. Both of them faltered. It seemed Naruto was getting closer to his limit, and would break soon. Then there would be no going back. Kakashi tried to speak up, but Naruto already started walking away. The damage was done, and he knew he couldn't fix what happened. It was already said and done. Sakura just glared at him. Naruto felt her killing intent and stopped dead in his tracks and turned back to her. "What? Got something to say?" he said through gritted teeth. Her glare just hardened. "Yeah, I guess my mother was always right. You truly are a demon," she screeched. Kakashi realized what came out of her mouth and turned to Naruto. His eyes were closed and was breathing in and out slowly. He was suppressing a ton of killing intent on his own will. When his eyes opened, they weren't the cerulean blue eyes. No, they were the red eyes that held all his pain, anger and hate. He glared at her and spoke. "You know what? I can't believe I ever thought of you as a friend. All you did was reject me and push me around or call me stupid then fawn over Sasuke. You're shallow, and I hope you realize Sasuke can't be saved. I know that now. So I'm done. You want him so badly. Next time you jump into the fray and try to convince to come back, 'cause I won't," he roared at her. She quickly stepped back. Kakashi knew what's done is done. He just hoped this didn't affect them too much. He knew that was a hopeless thought though. Sakura didn't have any words as both of them watched Naruto's retreating form. Naruto needed to calm down quickly, so he walked to the one place where he was always happy, his favorite shop, Ichiraku's. He needed some ramen too, he was starving. Before he knew it, he already had a bowl in front of him. Suddenly he felt someone sit next to him. It was Jiraiya. He sighed as he heard him speak. "So kid, tell me what's wrong. I know there's something that's bothering you," he said. Naruto looked up. "An argument took place between me, Kakashi and Sakura," he said. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. He knew something was wrong now. Naruto never fought that badly with his teammates, and if he did it was over something stupid, but the look on Naruto told him that this time it was serious. "What was said?" he asked. Naruto began to recall their argument, and as Jiraiya listened he could understand where he was coming from. "I see, Naruto, just remember, don't listen to what they think about it. Just know that you did what you had to. If you didn't, who's to say you would still be here?" he said. Naruto nodded to his sensei and looked at him. "Thank you," he said. Jiraiya nodded and looked up. "Now I got to go. If you need someone to talk to, don't hesitate to come to me again, or someone you know who would listen to you," he said quickly. Naruto nodded and watched as Jiraiya walked off. However, even with his comforting words, the damage was already done. Now he was slowly wondering about what to do, and he had no idea what was going to happen in the next day. It would shake him to his core and make him choose, and his life would never be the same. However, it would mean a change for the future, for a new chance at life. To really live and not be a victim. He quickly finished his food and started to walk away from the shop. As he walked in the streets, he noticed glares from the usual people. It seemed things never would change for him. He was walking for so long and he was lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice the footsteps behind him. He heard a cough behind him and turned to see Ino, Shikamaru and Choji. He growled as he saw their expressions. It seemed Sakura had already told them, most likely a exaggerated truth though. "What?" he asked dryly. Ino stepped forwards and spoke up. "Who do you think you are? Speaking to Sakura like that? Not to mention your sensei Kakashi?" she asked angrily. Shikamaru just shook his head. Choji shrugged and started to eat again. Ino flinched from Naruto's glare. "Really? Who do you think you're butting in when it isn't your business? You weren't even there. Do you know what was said at all?" he shouted. They all widened their eyes. Naruto was getting angry, and fast. "If you think Sakura is right, then go ahead and take her side. I already told my side and explained why I'm right, and I don't regret what I said at all. Sasuke came at me with the intent to kill, so I had no choice," he shouted. The QB started to come out again. Ino glared at him. Shikamaru was as well. "That wasn't very smart thing though. You could have gone about it differently," Shikamaru added. Naruto glared at him. Shikamaru flinched as he felt the killing intent. "Like I told her, I don't care what you think. I don't give two shits to what your opinion is. So butt out," he shouted. He quickly turned around and started to walk away. He heard some mutterings and curses, but ignored them and continued forwards. He shortly arrived at his apartment, and slammed the door, and fell on the bed, instantly falling asleep. He was done with it all. Flashback end. That was yesterday. He didn't care anymore. He didn't care what they thought. He had dealt with their opinions with him all his life and he wasn't too thrilled about it. He was about to get up and go to the Hokage's monument, to clear his head. However, he felt lightheaded and fell back on the bed unconscious. He suddenly found himself in his mind. He knew where he was. He didn't know why though. He looked at the cage that held the QB. It looked at him for a minute. "Brat, come closer," he said. Naruto flinched at his tone. It was its normal bitter one, but there was something else to it. Naruto didn't know what made him, but he complied and walked to the cage. "I can sense your mind is in turmoil. Now I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, kid. I can see what you see. I know what has transpired yesterday. The question for you is, what would you do about it to change your future?" he suddenly asked. Naruto blinked. Was this right? Was he actually having a civil conversation with him? "Why do you care?" Naruto asked suspiciously. The QB made a snorting sound before speaking up. "Contrary to popular belief, I am not evil. Even if you are a stubborn brat that needs to learn some respect, I have no choice in the matter. You are my host, and if something were to happen to you, I would be affected as well," he explained. Naruto blinked, but nonetheless spoke up. "What could I do about it anyways? Most of the village thinks I'm a demon. I know my attempts would be futile. They'd never see me as Naruto Uzumaki. No, they see me as a nuisance, and nonetheless a demon," he said. The QB looked at its host for a minute before relenting. "Listen, I'm going to be straight with you. Blunt as a matter of fact. What you say is true. With me and you never really get respect for who you are. Now I'm not suggesting freeing me. I know how that would turn out. No, what I'm saying is, why do you place your trust in people would already turn their backs to you? Why do you try to get them to acknowledge you when you know what the result will always be? With what happened yesterday is more proof to me, he said. Naruto sighed and realized there was some truth to what he was saying. Can you just get to the point? He asked dryly. The Kyuubi just snorted. Figures you'd say that, okay then. We know you aren't really welcome in this village and most of the people who are your friends have turned. Now let's put in a hypothetical and say you had a choice. You could stay in the village and never see any change in how they treat you, or you could throw caution to the wind and say fuck it, leave the damned place and start a new life. He said with a chuckle. Naruto's eyes widened. Become a missing nin? Are you insane? He screeched. The Kyuubi rolled his eyes. Yes, a missing nin. Now if this were the case, you wouldn't be alone. I'd personally train you how to use my chakra, so that you'd stand a chance against the hunters. He explained. Naruto's eyes widened again. If he did do that, he could get incredibly more powerful. He could even learn new jutsus from the other villages. It was tempting indeed. He knew there was a catch, however. What's the catch? He asked. The Kyuubi laughed. You're right, there is a catch. Now if you were to stay here, you'd eventually break and lose control and well, they might not want to deal with you. Who knows what could happen? Now if we were to do the first option, it would be hard to escape. I could do it though, if you gave me control over your body. Now this isn't permanent, just to get a good distance away. As to the catch, well, first would be some leeway. Give me some room to breathe in here. Then I would like to at least get some more time to control you. Preferably to fight. He explained. Naruto was weighing his options. He needed to know if there was any more to it. Is there anything else? He asked. A few things as well, but we can discuss those at a later date. Now there are some other things I think I should tell you, he said quickly. Naruto blinked again. What was he getting at? What is it? He asked. He heard what he assumed to be a sigh coming from the Kyuubi. Boy, it's about your parents. Why do you think they never told you your true parentage? They're hiding some very important details from you, he said. Naruto's eyes widened. It couldn't be true? Could it? He looked sharply at the Kyuubi. Explain. Was all he said. The Kyuubi chuckled a bit. That got your attention, huh? Well, it's true they are hiding something from you, and I know what it is. You see, your parents are rather famous and powerful. Especially your father. He started. Naruto's eyes widened again and he needed to know. Who are they? He asked quickly. The Kyuubi looked at him seriously. You want to know? You need to make a choice. If you knew who they were and you stayed here, it would only cause problems. Now if you were to leave and then find out, you could benefit from the knowledge better, he said quickly. Naruto blinked and got angry suddenly. He was being bribed. The Kyuubi was bribing him. Really? He asked dryly. The Kyuubi nodded numbly. Naruto sighed and looked at him. Give me some time to think it over, he said. The Kyuubi chuckled and nodded. Before Naruto knew it, he was already waking up. He quickly got up and started to think about his conversation with the Kyuubi. He was willing to train him and give him knowledge about his parents? That is if he followed what he said and left the village. He was tempted to do it after all, and all he needed one was little push and he would. He didn't know that the push he needed was coming, and soon, sooner than he thought. Before he knew it, the sun had set, and he wasn't back in his apartment yet. He was walking towards the Hokage's monument to think. He needed to decide what he was going to do, and fast. He knew there were ANBU members watching him closely. There was no doubt in his mind. People were noticing the change in his attitude and would come to investigate it. Soon he was sitting atop the monument, and was watching the night sky, and he suddenly heard footsteps behind him. He turned around to see Kakashi and a few ANBU members. Naruto, why are you up this late? Kakashi asked curiously. Naruto didn't speak. He didn't trust himself to control himself from his boiling rage. Why do you care? He spat. They noticed his tone was bitter and unforgiving. Kakashi sighed and spoke again. Tsunade wants to see you now. There's something she needs to talk to you about, he said. Naruto didn't move. He looked up before speaking. How can I trust what you say? He muttered. Everyone heard him and wondered what he was going on about. What do you mean? Kakashi asked quickly. Naruto turned around to look right at him. All my life, I've been treated like a demon by the villagers. I'm sick of it all. My loyalties are in question. Why am I even here when I'm lied to and being treated like I am? He asked aloud. Kakashi looked at him shocked. What do you mean? He asked hesitantly. He was afraid of the answer. The Kyuubi told me he knew who my parents are, so if you knew, why'd you lie about it? Naruto said aloud. Kakashi sighed and looked at him. I think it's time to go to the Hokage, Naruto, he said. He was avoiding the question. Naruto just started laughing. No, I don't think so, he muttered. Kakashi took a step back. What was he thinking? What was he going to do? What do you mean? Kakashi asked quickly. Naruto didn't speak at all. Suddenly a red chakra formed around him, and two tails formed. I think the brat said it pretty clearly. It was the Kyuubi. Everyone took up defensive stances. The Kyuubi was now in control. The night air was chilling. No words were said. However, everyone that was in the area could feel the spike in chakra, and it was enormous. Currently at the scene was Kakashi. He didn't expect this at all. What have you done to Naruto? He asked seriously. The Kyuubi chuckling noise, and glared at the man. Why do you care? You'd rather train that Uchiha or that pink-haired girl rather than my host? You know it's true too, remember the Chunin exams? He said dryly. Everyone was shocked at his words, for one reason. It seemed that he actually cared for the boy. Kakashi still didn't care. Why did you take over his body? He asked angrily. The Kyuubi snorted and laughed aloud. I'm afraid you're mistaken. Naruto has given me control, not the other way around. I have his permission to take over. He dropped a bomb on them. They were shocked. What was going on? What was the Kyuubi planning to do? Before anyone could speak up, a couple more people arrived at the scene. Sakura arrived in time with Sasuke, who still was hurt. He was wide-eyed at the sight before him. What is going on? Tsunade shouted in fury. The Kyuubi turned to the fifth Hokage and chuckled. Oh, nothing except explaining a few important details. I was waiting for a good-sized crowd to listen to what I'm about to say, and now the time is right. He said with a chuckle. Everyone felt uneasy at his words. What was about to be said? Jiraiya didn't even hesitate and shouted. What have you done with my student? He shouted. The Kyuubi looked at him boringly, and replied. Your student? Please, all you taught him was how to do the Rasengan. Granted, he does think of you as his real sensei, rather than that piece of shit Kakashi. Now that everyone is here, I think it's time to clear the air a bit. Get some stuff off my host's chest that needs to be said. Firstly, you are bastards and backstabbers, specifically you two, he said. Everyone watched as he pointed at Kakashi and Sakura. They wondered what had happened. Jiraiya sighed and looked at the Kyuubi. They know what they did, but that doesn't explain the fact why you're in possession of Naruto. He said. Everyone wondered what he knew. What happened? Tsunade asked quickly. Kakashi looked down and Sakura didn't even say anything. She glared at the Kyuubi. Those two had an argument with Naruto, and it seemed it affected him deeper than I thought. Jiraiya spoke up. Tsunade looked enraged. She stomped over to Kakashi and got in his face. What did you say? She asked, furious. Kakashi sighed and explained what went down the day before. As Tsunade heard it, she only got more angrier at him and her apprentice. She walked over to Sakura and glared at her. What right do you have to judge how he acted? If he didn't do what he did, he could have died. She shouted. Sakura glared back at Tsunade and replied back. I don't care what he thought was right. He almost killed him. She shouted stubbornly. A loud smack was heard suddenly. Everyone turned to see a red mark on Sakura's cheek. Tsunade had smacked her, hard. No one expected that at all. They knew Tsunade was a mother figure to Naruto and would do anything to protect him as well. They should have expected her to do that though. I have half a mind to punish both of you for what you have caused. However, we have bigger problems to deal with right now. She said aloud. Everyone turned to the chuckling Kyuubi and wondered what was going on. You're right, Tsunade. We do have bigger problems to deal with. He started to say. Everyone narrowed their eyes. How did you take over? She asked quickly. He chuckled again and replied to her. Like I told Kakashi over here before, Naruto did give me permission willingly. Me and him have come to an agreement of sorts. He explained. Everyone tensed and prepared for a fight. What agreement? Kakashi asked quickly. He looked at everyone around him before speaking up. This is a day everyone will remember. On this day, Naruto Uzumaki leaves the Hidden Leaf Village. He is going to crave a path throughout history starting with this day. He announced. Everyone's eyes widened. Naruto was going to become a missing nin? They all thought horrified. Everyone started to prepare their own separate jutsus to try to combat the Kyuubi and prevent him from leaving. I also should spill a bit of a secret that many of you don't know. It's about Naruto's parents. He said with a grin. Instantly Tsunade, Kakashi, Jiraiya all looked terrified and turned pale. He wouldn't, would he? They quickly thought. What do you mean secret? The dobe was left in an orphanage. Sasuke shouted. The Kyuubi glared at him and spoke up. It seems you don't think things thoroughly, do you, boy? How do you think he came into this world? The truth about his parents started on the day this village was attacked by me. Granted, I was under mind control by that bastard behind the mask. You see, it was covered up in an attempt to hide his true parentage and keep him out of harm's way, but fuck that. I say let them know and fear his true name. He shouted. The three who knew the secret dreaded what was about to be said next. What do you mean true name? Sakura asked curiously. The Kyuubi turned to her and snarled. Little girl, all those times you called my host idiot or moron. You didn't realize his potential, due to the fact his real name. Granted, he took his mother's name, and not his father's. Time to cause a bit of chaos among yourselves. His father's surname is Namikaze. He said. Silence, that's all that was heard after his statement. The people who knew that name eyes widened. The secret was out. Yes, that's right, Minato Namikaze, your very own Yondaime Hokage, is his father. He said aloud. Everyone's eyes widened now that the secret was out. The Kyuubi smirked and started to speak again. Now that is done with, Naruto wishes to let you know that you won't find him again. From this day onwards, he is no longer a shinobi of the leaf. Next time you see him, he won't be so forgiving of the people who betrayed his loyalty and trust. As for the others, he holds no resent, however he can't stay here anymore. He continued. Before anyone else could speak up, Tsunade did. Stop him from leaving! She shouted. The Kyuubi smirked and cracked his joints as he felt everyone's chakra rise. This was going to be fun. Fun indeed. He quickly dodged a Chidori from Kakashi, and everyone watched as one of the tails wrapped around the arm of Kakashi and threw him backwards. They were shocked he could manipulate the chakra like that. How? Sasuke asked quickly. He wondered how something like that could happen. They did outnumber the Kyuubi by a good bit. Kid, I'm the Kyuubi no Kitsune. This power is my own. I know how to wield it with deadly precision. He snorted. Everyone tensed again. They knew now they were in for the fight of their lives. They all watched slowly as the Kyuubi started to form a familiar hand seal. It was very familiar to them indeed. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he said quickly. Suddenly 5 puffs of smoke appeared and clones came out. They were all clones of the Kyuubi too. Everyone felt the chakra the clones had. It was immense. The Kyuubi was truly terrifying when it wanted to be. Everyone watched as the Kyuubi smirked and started to speak. I'm afraid stopping me is impossible. It is futile, he said quickly. No one listened and they charged forwards with the intent of stopping him to their fullest abilities. Suddenly everyone froze as the Kyuubi started to charge a large amount of chakra. They watched as his tails started to turn darker as 2 more formed. He was in his 4 tails form, and it didn't look like he was going to hold back. With no words said, everyone charged once again. Kakashi quickly formed another Chidori, but it futile as it was met with a clone's Rasengan. The clone was using the vermilion version of the move, effectively making overpower the Chidori by a large margin. It was a battlefield. Ino's team were dealing with 2 clones and were hopelessly outmatched. Tsunade and Jiraiya were taking on the real Kyuubi in its 4-tailed form. Jiraiya decided he had no choice. The Kyuubi watched with interest as he noticed the man's chakra rising by a large bit. Tsunade noticed it too and turned to him. They watched as he placed his hand on the ground. He was doing a summoning. They watched as none other than Gamabunta the chief toad was summoned. Jiraiya, why have you summoned me? He asked aloud. Jiraiya pointed to the Kyuubi. We need to stop the Kyuubi from escaping, he explained. Gamabunta took a look at what was currently going on. It was a big situation, no doubt. The Kyuubi growled as he knew this fight was starting to get a bit unfair. He was in his 4-tailed form and he was about to face off against the chief toad, who no doubt could easily handle him in his 4-tailed form. He quickly came up with a plan. It was a last-ditch effort. Being that they were still on top of the Hokage's monument, he could get a little reckless. He knew Naruto wouldn't like it if he destroyed the village. He wanted to leave and start anew, not destroy it. Everyone watched as the clones dissipated, leaving the Kyuubi to himself. They knew he was planning something. He suddenly roared and charged his chakra even higher. He was starting to gain more tails. He stopped at 6. Everyone stared at him as pieces of bone started to form on top of the chakra he possessed. Surprising everyone, he curled his tails around him and swung them in a windmill motion. He was trying to create some room. He proceeded to leap in the air and form 2 large Rasengans in his hands. They wondered what he was planning. It seemed like he was going to fall down to the ground and aim them at the ground. However, they were shocked as he placed both of them together. In an instant they blew up, thus launching him higher into the air. He was about a good 40 feet in the air. They all started to run away from the blast site as he plummeted back towards the ground. They all watched as he neared the ground. He slammed his tails like a hammer and made a big shockwave, knocking everyone back and kicking up a lot of dust. He knew it was time to make his getaway while everyone was distracted. 10 minutes later all the dust cleared away, leaving a shocked group of shinobi. All of them realized what had happened. Tsunade was enraged. Jiraiya was too, however for different reasons. He glared at Kakashi and Sakura as the silence rolled on. I want him found now. He is now a missing nin. Bring him back here at any cost. Tsunade shouted in fury. She then looked to Kakashi and Sakura. You two, meet me first thing in my office in the morning. You'd better not be late, she said through gritted teeth. She turned to Jiraiya and spoke up. Jiraiya, you trained him more than Kakashi, so you should be able to figure out his patterns. Think about what he would do and find out where he could be going, she said quickly. He nodded and sprang into action and sprinted off into the night. Tsunade was barking orders left and right. She needed to do damage control quickly. It would only be a bit before the council heard of the whole ordeal. They would want him to be found quickly. Once they learned the truth about his parents, there would be no going back. As everyone was still in their stupor, she noticed something in the middle of the crater that was caused by the impact of the Kyuubi. Quickly dashing towards it, she kneeled and picked it up. It was his headband. To her it was now real. It dawned on her. He left, and didn't plan on coming back. The morning after, Kakashi and Sakura were currently walking to the Hokage's office. They knew they were in for a rough lesson about what they did. Sakura couldn't help feel guilty. However, one thing was currently nagging her mind. Kakashi, is Naruto really the son of the 4th? She asked. He turned to her and nodded numbly. Yes, it was kept a secret for his safety. However, now that doesn't matter. It's only a matter of time before the rumor spreads and the other villages learn of the truth, he said quickly. They looked around the village to see it in a cheerful attitude. It seemed they noticed the lack of certain someone. They wondered what they would do when they heard about his father. They soon arrived at Tsunade's office and opened the door. As soon as they stepped in, they were met with glares from both Tsunade and Shizen. Shizen quickly left the room, probably to avoid letting her temper get the best of her. Tsunade sighed and spoke up. You two will listen very closely, and you will not interrupt me at all, she started. They both nodded and listened as she continued on. I have a mission for you two specifically. You're going to go to Suna and report what happened to their council on what happened. With them out of Akazekage, it's most likely the council is leading the village. He can't be out of the land of fire yet, so if he were to start moving again, he might go towards Suna. Report back once you have done just that, she said quickly. They both nodded and left for Suna. She watched as they left the office and she sighed and looked at the paperwork on her desk. One piece of parchment on her desk pertained to a certain individual. If she signed it, she couldn't go back. It would already be done. It was to make Naruto Uzumaki a official missing nin. Somewhere in the land of fire, in a damp cave, a certain spiky-haired blonde was starting to stir awake. A drop of water did the damage and he bolted upright, his thoughts roaring to figure out what happened. Brat, calm down already, the Kyuubi said in his head. Naruto blinked and stood up. He looked around the cave he was in. He assumed the Kyuubi put him here when he was far enough from the village. So what happened? He muttered in his head. The Kyuubi began to tell him what had happened. Naruto's eyes narrowed when he heard about it. So my father? He asked in his head. The Kyuubi sighed and knew it was time to tell him. Your father was the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, he answered. Naruto's mind ran a blank. He then screeched in his head, which clearly annoyed the Kyuubi, with an effective shout telling him to shut it. So where are we and what now? Naruto asked quickly. The Kyuubi was silent for a bit. We're still in the land of fire. I'd suggest going to one of the smaller villages and getting some supplies. Maybe try to change your appearance a bit, the Kyuubi said. Naruto nodded and proceeded to climb out of the cave and begin his new life. As he sprinted across the terrain, Naruto had his own questions he needed answered. He wondered what training the Kyuubi was going to give him. He knew it was going to be rough. He knew without a shred of doubt that it wasn't going to be easy. He knew that Fox was going to have some kind of sadistic pleasure in torturing him with grueling hours of training. He knew it was the truth too. He was currently deciding what his best course of action would be, and it was about which village to go to. He needed supplies for sure. He also needed to get out of this jumpsuit. He stuck out like a sore thumb in it. He was going to get a mask like Kakashi wore. It would definitely make it harder for someone to recognize him. He wasn't about to be stupid and waddle into Suna. He had no doubt in his mind that Tsunade had sent a party to there to inform him of his escape, so he couldn't risk it. So he was debating on going to Kusa and shopping there, then heading out again before anyone got suspicious of him. They were allies with Konoha after all. So he needed to proceed with caution. He also knew he couldn't go crazy with spending. Granted, he did save up a good bit of Ryo. However, he knew it would only last him so long, so he needed to be careful and make sure to not overspend. He needed just the essentials. So with those thoughts in his mind, he raced towards his destination. He assumed it would be an hour or two before he reached it. Before he knew it, he had already arrived at the village. He needed to be careful. He couldn't stay forever and people would know a new face. So with his thoughts in place, he walked into a general store. The clerk instantly knew he wasn't from around the village. Obviously someone new. Hi there. New to Kusa, huh? What can I help you with? He asked quickly. Naruto looked at him and needed to put his words carefully. A missing nin was a very big deal. If the clerk had tiny bit of suspicion that he was one, he could easily go to the leader of the village and report his suspicions. Naruto cleared his throat and spoke up. I'm in need of few supplies. Firstly, needed to get a change of clothes and some hair dye, he said quickly. The clerk narrowed his eyes. He obviously thought something was up. Why the hair dye? He asked quickly. Naruto gulped and decided to bluff and bullshit his way out. I'm on an undercover mission from my village. Can't have anyone knowing who I am or recognizing me. That's why I am not wearing my headband, he bluffed. The clerk's expression changed quickly. Oh, I'm so sorry. Very well, follow me, he said quickly. Naruto nodded and followed him. He heard the Kyuubi chuckle in his head. Nice one, kid, a piece of advice. Maybe stop at the library and get a book or two on persuasion and deception. It would be a very useful tool to have at a moment's notice. Eventually you could get so good at it you'd have a silver tongue, he suggested. Naruto blinked. That was a pretty decent point. Why not? He thought. The clerk led him to one of the aisles and it had general goods. He looked around and spotted some of the things he needed. One was a pitch-black mask that covered most of his face, leaving one eye for seeing. He decided to take it. He looked at the clothes. He picked out a sleek, tight-fitting combat jacket that had a good amount of hidden pockets. He smirked as he grabbed it. He could hide a good bit of stuff if the need arose. He picked out a matching pair of shorts and took a look at the hair dyes. He didn't want something that would stick out, something that would look natural if anyone asked or got suspicious about it. It was a choice between a few colors, either red, black, a tan or a tan/sandy color. He decided to go with black, since it was pretty much the opposite of his bright yellow. No one would probably expect him to have black hair. Gathering all of his stuff, he proceeded back to the checkout. The clerk saw the mask and raised an eyebrow. Naruto saw this and quickly spoke up. Decided to get it on a whim. Better safe than sorry, he mused. The clerk seemed to buy it and rang it all up. Before he knew it, Naruto was already outside. He quickly walked into a nearby alleyway and proceeded to change. Quickly throwing his orange jumpsuit in a nearby trash can, He proceeded to walk to the nearby library and decided to pick up a few persuasion books and started to read. He chuckled as he read the title. Speechcraft for Morons? However, he opened the book and started to read nonetheless. It was about 30 minutes later and he summed up what the book told him, different manners of speaking and how to use certain words to your advantage. He thought it was a pretty good idea to learn persuasion. It would definitely help him later. He eventually read what he could. He knew he couldn't stay in the village that much longer. He was sure Tsunade was already sending parties to the other villages to find any traces of him. He quickly put the book back and walked into the bathroom. It was time to dye his hair. It was a messy 15 minutes later, and he finally came out with sleek black hair. He guessed no one would know he was Naruto Uzumaki. As he finally stepped out of the building, he looked at the mask and fitted it to his face. It was time to move on and decide his next course of action. Now he knew with this disguise he could go to some villages who knew his name. They wouldn't be able to see past his measures and wouldn't know it was him. Only a few people could be able to see past it. He knew if he ran into anyone from the Leaf, they would be harder to fool. He still needed to focus on training too. He shuddered at what he wondered it was going to be like. So what's this training you're going to give me? Naruto asked the QB. He waited for a response from the being he held. First thing you need to learn about is your chakra. You have 2 types of chakra. Yours and mine, each with its own properties and affinities. He started. Naruto drew a blank. Affinities? He asked confused. He heard the QB snort before replying. I keep forgetting that those teachers you had at that academy barely taught you jack shit. You see, there are 5 affinities. Earth, fire, lightning, wind and water. I have the fire affinity with my chakra, while yours is a wind affinity. He explained. Naruto's eyes widened, then he rose an eyebrow. How do you know mine is a wind affinity? He replied confused. The QB snorted again before replying. Brat, I've been with you since you were born. I can easily tell what your chakra's affinity is. Now on to the next part. Wind chakra is very deadly and precise when trained right. However, I don't know how to train in that area, so we will work with my chakra. Since it's your best bet at staying alive against the hunters that will no doubt come for you, we will start with my chakra. He explained. So what exactly can I use your chakra for? Naruto asked confused. He assumed the QB was rolling his eyes as he spoke. My chakra is very powerful, as you know. It has multiple applications. The most obvious is fire release. That is the easiest to learn. However, that's not what I'm going to teach you first. Chakra is very malleable and as such can be used in multiple ways. To start your training, you need to meditate so you can come inside your mind so we can proceed with the next step. He explained. Naruto nodded to himself and found a nice spot to sit down. He slowed his breathing to a steady rate and calmed down. Not a thing interrupted him as he delved deeper into the silence. Soon he found himself going deep into his subconscious and found himself standing before the QB itself. Good, now we can proceed, he stated. The QB then held his fist out and looked to the boy. Bond our chakra together. It will be easier for you to call upon mine afterwards, he explained. Naruto nodded and placed his fist against the QB. Once he did, he felt a rush of power. Suddenly his subconscious started to fall apart as woke up. He looked at his hands to see no real difference. Now it's time for you to call upon my chakra to do so. Reach deep down and pull it from the depths. Search for an intense source. You'll know when you find it, he explained. Naruto hummed and focused. He felt a roaring sensation of pure flames. He pulled it forwards and it started to ignite like gasoline was poured on it. Suddenly chakra flowed like an endless. He looked at his body, covered in the red chakra. It was like the time when he faced Niji, except it seemed more controlled and tamed. Like he could use it freely. He chuckled as he knew he could now. Now before you go crazy and test it out like no tomorrow, you need to know this chakra is like a beacon in the night. Any sensor will be able to pick up the massive spike in energy. It's my chakra after all. You need to hurry and do some quick tests, and then get rid of the chakra and get the fuck away from the area. Anyone nearby will, he explained. Naruto nodded to himself. He knew what it meant. He should only use it when it was absolutely necessary. He was going to train a bit with it though, so he did get a good grip on it. At least he would know how to use it right when the time came. Okay, now with my chakra, you can use a very special property it can utilize. It's called Foxfire. As a kitsune, my chakra allows for its use. Foxfire is very powerful. It doesn't need any hand signs to use either, so it's versatile. To use it, imagine the chakra igniting and its temperature increasing. If you do it right, you will summon the Foxfire, he explained. Naruto nodded and closed his eyes, then started to concentrate. He started to feel his hands get hot. He concentrated even more on that sensation, and it felt like they were burning. He opened his eyes to see them covered in golden flames. He could tell they were very powerful. Doing an experiment, he wondered how they could be manipulated. He quickly noticed it was tougher than he thought. He was about to make the flames swirl around him like a cloak. However, that was really all he could do. He needed more practice. That is good enough for now. As you must have noticed, the fire is very difficult to manipulate. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to do quite a bit with it, the QB said quickly. Naruto nodded and let his chakra fade. Once it did, he took a look around. No one was around, so he knew it was okay to start to move again. He needed to think of his next course of action. He was thinking of making a pit stop to Suna and recon to see what was going on there, and if anyone knew his whereabouts. He needed to have some kind of information on what was going on in Konoha, so Suna it was. If you're going there, make sure to stay under the radar. I have a feeling we're gonna hit an obstacle soon, the QB said. Naruto hummed to himself and nodded to the QB's advice. He began again towards his next destination. He knew Suna was about another 5 hours from where he was. He wasn't in a hurry though. So with that in his mind he set off at a nice pace. With Kakashi and Sakura, the two of them stood at the gates of Konoha, ready to depart to Suna. Kakashi looked to Sakura and spoke up. You ready? He asked. She nodded and both of them started. Kakashi knew this trip was going to take most of the day to make it. He wasn't in a hurry either. However, he didn't know something would cause him to rush. It was about 3 hours later and they weren't even out of the land of fire yet. It was until they felt a massive chakra spike. Kakashi and Sakura looked at each other quickly. Was that Naruto? Sakura asked quickly. Kakashi hummed and replied. Most likely. Who else do we know that has that kind of chakra? I'd say that was him starting to use the QB's chakra more. He mused. Sakura's eyes widened. She looked to where the source was coming. Anyone in the area could feel the massive chakra he was using. Let's hurry, Kakashi said quickly. Sakura nodded and they both sprinted towards where they felt the chakra. It was about 15 minutes later, and they arrived at a clearing. However, it was deserted. It was obvious that someone had recently been there though. We just missed him, Kakashi cursed. Sakura looked around to see anything to point his direction he was going. Any ideas where he could be going? She asked. Kakashi sighed and walked to a spot where it was barren. It was obvious the chakra made the impression in the ground. He was looking for any tracks or signs that would have been left. He looked up to the sky to see there was a good bit of daylight left. Well, there's a few options he could have chosen. Either he stopped at Kusa and did some stuff and is now heading towards Suna. If that's the case, we might catch him there. However, he may already have been to Suna and is going towards Kusa. Either way, we know he is in the area. We need to continue to Suna though. Let's hope we can find him there, he mused. They both started once again towards their destination. Before they knew it, they were already in Suna walking around. They spotted someone familiar to them. It was Temari. She looked to be shopping. They walked up to her and got her attention. Temari cautiously turned around in shock to see them. What can I do for you? She asked quickly. Kakashi looked at her and spoke up. We need to speak to whoever is in charge, he said. Temari raised an eyebrow. What is wrong? She asked quickly. Sakura looked down while Kakashi replied. Naruto Uzumaki had become a missing nin, he said. Temari was surprised. The little hyperactive kid had ran away. She knew something was off. There was something they were hiding. What caused the runt to run away? She asked confused. She knew something had happened. Kakashi knew he couldn't spill the secret of him being the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. It would only cause chaos among them. A long list of things that needed to be fixed. Now we believe he isn't going to give anyone a chance. We think he may be coming to Suna, he said quickly. Temari sighed and spoke up. Okay, I'll take you to the council. Since our Kazekage died from Orochimaru, a new one hasn't been appointed, she said. They both nodded and followed her. Soon they arrived at a building and entered it. Temari sat outside the building thinking about what could have caused such a change in the boy to make him become a missing nin. She drew up a blank. She knew he practically loved the village. So why would he forsake it and desert it? She thought quickly. She had no idea just how much he was changed, and wouldn't go back at all. It was something obvious to her. She knew he was going to change. However, she didn't know just how much he would. She was interrupted by a strange feeling, like she was being watched. She looked around to see no one, yet the feeling still remained. She hesitantly took out her fan and looked around. That's when she looked up and noticed someone was watching her, or the building for some reason. She couldn't make out the appearance. With no hesitation, she hopped on her fan and used it like a glider, sending her upwards to the roof where the boy was. Once she got there, she took in his appearance. He looked like a miniature Kakashi, with pitch black hair. His lone eye watched her like a hawk, ready at a moment's notice. Who are you? She quickly asked. She noticed he didn't have a headband. She narrowed her eyes and began to get into a stance. The boy took note of this and did the same. A fated battle was about to take place atop the village. A cold breeze blew past the two of them as they stared at each other unflinchingly. Temari had no idea who this was. She thought for a second it might have been Naruto. But Naruto didn't dress like this and didn't have black hair. Oh, how wrong would she be when all the secrets spilled out? She looked at him closely as he did. Who are you and what are you doing here? She asked quickly. He didn't answer. He feared a bit that if he spoke, she might recognize his voice. He knew Kakashi and Sakura were still in Suna as well. So he couldn't get reckless and cause a massive scene that would no doubt attract unwanted attention. I'll give you one more chance to answer me, or I will beat it out of you forcefully, she shouted angrily. She didn't like the look he was giving her. It was observant like a hawk watching its prey. But at the same time it was bored and lazy, like he thought she wasn't worth it or that he didn't have the time of the day for this. You're Temari, brother to Gaara and Kankuro. You should leave while you still can, Naruto said in a deep voice. He was trying to mask his voice somewhat, by making it more animalistic and deeper. She narrowed her eyes and brought her fan out. Who are you and how do you know about us? She demanded angrily. Naruto sighed and realized he had no choice. It was hopeless to try to avoid this situation. Once Temari noticed he isn't responding to her at all, she took out her battle fan. Futon, Kazakiri no Jutsu, she shouted. Naruto quickly rolled out of the way as the sharp blast of wind came at him. He cursed as he realized if he got hit by those, it could rip his mask off. He looked at her to see her sizing him up. It was obvious she realized it wasn't going to be easy. However, that wasn't going to stop her. She quickly let off another cutting whirlwind at him, which of course he easily dodged. She stopped for a second as he started to make a few hand signs. It quickly ended, and with 4 words sent her into shock. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he shouted. All around her clones formed. She counted about 20 of them all ready to attack at once, and they did. They all charged at once. Futon, Kazakiri no Jutsu, she shouted again. This time she spun her fan in a circular motion, intending on hitting as many clones as she could. She did get a good bit of them. She looked to the man to see him standing still. I'm going to say this once. Leave now before I have to end this, he said quickly. She scoffed at him. He lowered his head for a split second. She wondered what he was going to do. She watched as he formed a Rasengan. She looked shocked. She knew this technique and the destructive power it held. Naruto sighed and looked at her one last time and charged. In a split-second decision she rolled out of the way, but she let go of her fan. Her eyes widened as she saw the Rasengan hit the ground near her. She didn't even know what happened, but she was sent flying. Naruto cursed as he realized what he did. He knocked her off the roof of the building, and without her fan she would surely fall to her death. He knew he could save her, but it would come at a price. That price was revealing who he was. The Kyuubi seemed to read his thoughts and spoke in his mind. Just know if you do this, there's no going back, he said quickly. Naruto knew that already. He sighed and knew what he had to do. Just do it already, he shouted back to the fox. He heard a chuckle, and it was like a snap, and Naruto felt the immense amount of chakra come to him. With an explosion of the demonic chakra, his appearance changed. 2 tails formed as his features turned animalistic. The mask was already starting to fall off from the wind blasts he was facing earlier. Now with his transformation it did the final part, and it fell on the ground, leaving him exposed. You better hurry, that girl is falling to her death, the Kyuubi mocked in his head. Naruto just growled and got on all 4s and ran as fast as he could and leaped off the building. Temari looked up just in time to see something coming at her. Her eyes widened with fear as she took in the boy's appearance. Before she knew it, she was grabbed by him and hoisted on his shoulders in midair. Hold on tight, he said through gritted teeth. Naruto was losing control and fast. He didn't have any training with his transformations, so he knew it would only be a matter of time before he lost himself. Temari shut up and watched in awe as he scaled the building with his claws. Before they knew it, they were on a roof across Suna. Naruto dropped her quickly as he felt someone coming. He heard someone land and turned around to see none other than Kakashi and Sakura. Naruto, Sakura muttered sadly. Temari heard that, and her eyes widened instantly. That's Naruto, she screeched aloud. She looked at the boy who was pouncing on all 4s, ready to attack at any notice. I see you don't know about me that much, Naruto muttered through gritted teeth. Kakashi and Sakura were surprised to see him able to speak. They wondered if he had control. Are you in control? Kakashi asked cautiously. Naruto just glared at him and growled. For a little bit, yes. I haven't had much practice with the Kyuubi for my transformations. That doesn't matter, however. I'm not returning to that shithole of a village, he roared. Here's a little help, brat. Your transformation gets stronger with rage, while your level of control decreases as you gain more tails. To successfully remain in control of yourself, keep your mind calm and focused. He heard the Kyuubi in his head. Temari's eyes widened when she heard the word Kyuubi. He was a Jinchuriki? She quickly thought, stupefied. It hit her like a train. The Kyuubi was the most powerful of the tailed beasts, with it having 9. You're the Jinchuriki for the 9 tails, she exclaimed. Kakashi and Sakura sighed and looked at the still pouncing form of Naruto. Naruto, you must come back to the village, they need you, Sakura said aloud. Naruto just glared at her and roared. You shut your fucking mouth. Do you have any idea what it's like to be treated like a demon all your life? Tell me, what did you ever do to help me in my times of need? He shouted angrily. Temari's eyes widened once again. Gaara and him were so alike. She knew that was main reason Naruto got through to him. They were both considered demons by their respective villages. Kakashi sighed and realized there was no getting through to him. They would have to subdue him. That is if they could. Sakura, watch out. This is going to be a tough fight. Naruto will fight more animalistic and more unpredictable. Don't let down your guard, he said quickly. Sakura just scoffed and spoke up. You're right, even if he is powered up with the Kyuubi, me and you can take him on, she said foolishly. Kakashi was about to speak up, but noticed Naruto had vanished. He quickly turned to Sakura and looked above her to see him, already in midair with his claws aimed at her. He quickly dashed and pushed her out of the way just in time to hold out his hand and grab the clawed hand that was aiming right for her. Kakashi couldn't believe it. How did he get so fast? He wondered. He wondered how powerful the boy could truly become. He was under the Kyuubi's own tutelage. He had no doubt Naruto would eventually become a force to be reckoned with. However, A part of him wondered if that was good or bad. Sakura looked fearful at the way Naruto ruthlessly attacked her and Kakashi. It was obvious he was going to do everything in his power to keep them from bringing him back to the village. Kakashi managed to throw him off. He looked at him wearily as he got back. Quit while you at it, you have no chance now. I will only grow stronger from now on. Naruto raged. Temari wondered what was driving him to be like this. The boy she knew as Naruto Uzumaki was nothing like this. He was a happy and joyful kid, not a rageful monster bent on something like this. Naruto! Why won't you come back? Sakura screeched. She had tears in her eyes. Naruto saw this and closed his eyes. Suddenly a wave of chakra exploded from him as another tail formed. You have the audacity to ask me that after what you two did? Remember what both you said to me that day. Both of you have no idea what I felt after all of that. No one even tried to come to my side to see what was wrong. Only Jiraiya was able to see something was wrong. Then I find out about my parents from the Kyuubi, and I think to myself, who can I trust? This is your final warning. Leave now and don't try to find me again. I will never return to that village. He roared angrily. Temari looked sad at what she heard. It wasn't on a whim that he left. No, it was from all the clashing thoughts he had about his reasons. Then he found out about people lying to him, and it only shoved him further down the path he was on now, and there was no turning back now. She could only wonder what they did to him to make him like this. She also wondered what the others did. She knew if he was a Jinchuriki he would have a hard life. Please, Naruto. Everyone wants you back, Sakura said aloud. Naruto scoffed and glared at her. Enough. Go back to your Sasuke that you wanted back so much. I did bring him back for you, didn't I? Then you turn your backs on me and say I almost killed him, please bitch. He used that curse mark with the Chidori. It's time to end this, he said quickly. Both of them tensed as he started to form a familiar hand sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he roared. 3 clones appeared around him, each ready to strike at any second. Temari knew this fight was starting to get out of hand. She didn't have her battle fan either, so she was useless in stopping him. Right-un, Reijutsuga, Kakashi shouted. Naruto watched as the lightning beast came charging at him with ferocious speeds. He only had one choice. He quickly formed a Rasengan in his hand and ran forwards. Everyone watched as the demonic red chakra rolled off the Rasengan like nothing. The 2 opposing jutsus quickly caused a gigantic blast that made everyone cover their eyes and ears. Naruto knew he had to do something quickly. He soon would start to run out of chakra, and that would be very stupid of him and especially deadly. He also knew his control over the tailed forms were dwindling every second that passed. How do I come out of my form? He asked the Kyuubi in his head. He waited for a response from the Kyuubi. Normally you can't, however I can bring you out of it. There are other ways for you to do it as well. Chakra exhaustion is a big one. Being that your chakra control is horrible, that's likely going to happen soon. It's time for you to come up with an escape plan, he heard in his head. Naruto nodded numbly and began to think on what to do. He suddenly came up with a plan. Time to put it into motion. He waited as the blast calmed down, and everyone gained their bearings back. They all watched as the clones didn't move, they just stayed still. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto roared even louder this time. All around them clones appeared on the roof. Kakashi and Sakura quickly put up their guards as they saw the clones. Temari wondered what he was going to do. Each clone looked at them with clear intent. They all looked to the clones to see them start to glow a golden color. It was some kind of fire. What is that? Sakura screeched. Kakashi didn't know. He knew it was some kind of fire. He knew that it was powerful also. I don't know exactly, but it is a kind of fire that Naruto must have learned how to produce, he mused. Everyone covered their eyes once again as the flames got brighter suddenly. It was starting to get intense. The heat was getting very hot as well. They suddenly heard a few scraping noises and what sounded like someone getting punched over and over again. What they didn't know is the clones had used that moment they blinded them to slingshot the real Naruto out of the way. He was already climbing the wall to get outside and into the desert and head to his next destination. Back where the fight had taken place, the blinding light had disappeared along with Naruto and his clones. Kakashi and Sakura were completely dumbfounded that he escaped. How? Sakura muttered. Kakashi didn't even respond and looked up to the sky and sighed. It was time to report to Tsunade. Temari on the other hand was feeling a lot of emotions. The main one was anger. Why did they insist they needed to get him back when they knew he wasn't going to come back? She quickly thought. She was also feeling sorry for the now missing Nin. It was obvious he didn't want to come back and they weren't going to stop trying to do just that, which would only anger him more. She started to wonder where he could be going. She knew soon he would become stronger than anyone could imagine. She wondered the next time they would meet. She knew it wasn't going to be for a while. Thanks for leading us to the council, Temari. We must report back to the Hokage now, Kakashi suddenly said. Temari had to ask a question. What are you planning to do with Naruto? She asked quickly. She didn't flinch as Sakura glared at her. Kakashi just sighed and spoke softly. To tell you the truth, I don't know. It's up to Tsunade if she wants to pursue him. However, I know it's futile. He won't come back, he said. Sakura gasped and looked at Kakashi. We can bring him back, she argued. Kakashi just shook his head. The damage was already done, Sakura. Naruto's path is his own now. We wouldn't be able to get through to him, especially after what happened," he said softly. Sakura went to speak again, however she shut her mouth as she realized he was right. Both of them nodded to Temari and began their journey back. Near Konoha, two figures stood atop a tree branch looking over the village hidden in the leaves. One was looking stoically at the village he once called home. The other had a thoughtful face that resembled a shark. These two were watching for any signs that could lead to a certain someone's whereabouts. "He left the village about 5 days ago, correct?" The man with the sword on his back. The other didn't reply just yet. He was staring at the village for a good bit. "That's what the rumors say, Kisame," he said. Kisame looked at the village hidden in the leaves for a good bit. The man beside him stood up and turned around. "Our spies say he was seen in Suna not too long ago. If he was spotted, he could have already left. Let's see if we can intercept him," he said. Kisame nodded and stood up. "Let's go, Itachi," he said. Both of them sped off in the direction they were hoping to find their target. Both of them stopped suddenly when they saw something that intrigued them greatly. It was tracks and they were fresh. Kisame bent down to inspect them a bit closer. "Someone was here very recently. They were clumsy too, like they were tired," he mused. Itachi looked around to see if there were more of them. He saw some. They were heading in the opposite direction they were going, away from Suna. "You think the Jinchuriki left Suna and is headed to a new destination?" Kisame asked quickly. Itachi gave an affirmative grunt. "Naruto is crafty, but he is dense and sometimes stupid. Something tells me we need to proceed with caution. If he escaped both Suna and Konoha, then there's something we don't know," Itachi said. Kisame thought about it for a moment, and knew from what he heard about the boy, that he was indeed crafty. He was a prankster after all, and he couldn't doubt that there was definitely something they didn't know if he escaped from both villages. "You're right, his tracks though. If I think where he's going is right, we may have a problem," Kisame said suddenly. Itachi turned to him with a confused glance. "What?" he asked confused. Kisame looked to him and replied, "I think he is headed towards Kumo. If he gets there, it will be a lot harder to find him," he said. Itachi sighed and realized that was the truth. Kumo was pretty big, and it would take a while to find him if he was headed there. "Well, let's not waste any time and let's see if we can catch up to him," Itachi said quickly. Kisame nodded and they both sped off in the direction the tracks led. Naruto sluggishly walked under the canopy of the forest he was currently in. If he had to guess, he was at least a day from the land of lightning. He nearly escaped from Suna and it took, if not all, most of his chakra to do so. "So what's your plan?" he heard the Kyuubi ask in his head. Naruto was silent for a good bit. He was thinking on his next course of action. He was on his way to Kumo, but when he got there, then what? That was the missing detail in his mind. He quickly decided he would cross that bridge when the time came. He was startled when the Kyuubi suddenly spoke up. "Kid, keep moving and don't stop at all," he heard. Naruto wondered what he meant by that. What was going on? He quickly thought. "What's the matter?" he asked in his head. The Kyuubi was silent for a good bit. "We're being followed," he replied. Naruto instantly tensed. He thought he already got away from Suna? Who was following him? Those thoughts were running through his head like a speeding bullet. "Who is it?" he asked cautiously. He couldn't fight right now, so he needed a place to hide out for a while. He needed to rest and get his strength back before he could take on someone. "Don't know exactly who, but I sense 2 distinctive chakra signatures that are coming towards us," he said quickly. Naruto nodded and stood up straight. He needed to conserve what little chakra he had left, so fighting them was out of the question. Even with the Kyuubi's chakra, it would still be a tough fight with it being 2 against 1. He, however, had a plan. "I'm gonna call on your chakra some. I'm gonna try to confuse them with shadow clones. Make them spread out while making obvious tracks," he said quickly. The Kyuubi was silent for a good bit. "You'd better hurry, they're coming closer," he said finally. Naruto nodded and started to call on the chakra. He only wanted a little bit. Only enough to make 4 or 5 clones. As the familiar red chakra covered him, he started to form the hand seals. "Kaige Bunshin no Jutsu," he shouted. 4 clones appeared in front of him when Naruto finished giving orders. They all nodded and split up, making as many tracks as they could, purposefully making obvious that anyone could see them. Naruto then decided to take a detour. He quickly thought that they might have known where he was headed. So his 1-day trip turned into a 3-day trip. He knew what he just did would confuse them a bit and give him a window to get a good distance away. However, he needed to find somewhere he could rest soon. The nearest village that he could go to was Yuga, so he decided that was where he would head for right now. Where he was right now made Yuga about a couple hours away, and he could make it if he really wanted to, but he was still exhausted. So he opted for looking for something hidden, so that his chances of being discovered were slim. He also preferred something that had multiple escape routes. If the need arose, he could use them. After about 10 minutes of searching, he found a spot that was covered by dense trees and a cave that had an overhang. He didn't know how far the cave went, and what was in it. He didn't want to go exploring either. Settling down by an enclosed area by the cave, he began to make a small fire pit. He wasn't going to light it yet. He needed food, so that meant only one thing. He was going to have to hunt for it. That was one thing he never had to do, so this was going to be a trial and error type thing for him. However, he wasn't going to fail. Use your chakra to enhance your senses. Use your senses to find an animal and kill it to get food. He heard suddenly. Naruto blinked quickly after hearing that. Huh? He muttered confused. He assumed the Kyuubi was rolling his eyes. Consider this your next lesson. Chakra is very malleable, as I've told you before. As such, it can be used in quite a different number of ways. Chakra can be used in a single place to strengthen that area. As such, it can be used in a multiple of ways. That boy with the dog used his chakra to enhance his smell during the fight with you. You can do the same if you learn how to. The Kyuubi explained. Naruto listened as the Kyuubi continued on. There are also different types of chakra. One could very well solve this problem you're having. It's called senjutsu. It is the natural energy that you mix with your own chakra. People who utilize this chakra are called sages, and they enter a mode called sage mode. He continued. Naruto blinked and spoke up. How do I use senjutsu? He asked. The Kyuubi chuckled before replying. To learn how to use senjutsu requires 3 things. One is sensing the natural energy, then you must let it gather around you by meditation. Then finally you must learn to mix it with your own chakra. He explained. Naruto knew there was something else that he wasn't telling him. What's the catch? He asked quickly. The Kyuubi chuckled and replied. There is a catch. You see, those toads have a special oil on their mountain that makes it easier to learn how to use the natural energy for sage mode, since we don't have that luxury. It will be twice as hard to learn it. It's not going to happen overnight. He explained. Naruto sighed as he heard the Kyuubi. He knew it was going to take a while to learn to use senjutsu, so he needed to figure out a time when he could start to meditate and learn it. After all, he was being chased and was currently a missing nin, so senjutsu would have to wait. Is there anything I can do to help find an animal to kill it, so I can get food? He asked quickly. The Kyuubi was silent for a while. You could use the first step of senjutsu to search for the natural energy that an animal would have, a life force to be exact. He explained. Naruto just sighed and found a quiet place and sat down. It was obvious to him that was all the help he was going to get from the fox this time. He sat there for about 30 minutes and started to feel something. It was like a raindrop falling on a pond and causing a ripple with the feeling spread out to him. He had a feeling that this was the natural energies that the Kyuubi was talking about. He noticed several different things around him, like dots on a map. He thought it was like a radar. He noticed one point near him was still and not moving at all. He opened his eyes and hopped on a tree limb and crept closer to where he found the source. As he neared it, he found a clearing with a deer curled up by a bush. He now understood how senjutsu worked. He still wasn't ready to actually use it with his chakra and use sage mode, but he had no doubt he would eventually learn it. He wasn't going to fail at that. He knew what he was about to do was something he never thought he would do, but it was that or starving. With no choice, he took out a shuriken and hurled it with precision at the sleeping deer. 5 minutes later, he was dragging the carcass to his campsite. I'm surprised you were able to sense the natural energy that quickly. Usually it takes a lot longer. The Kyuubi said suddenly. Naruto chuckled and began to set up a fire to cook the meat. He knew most of it was going to be wasted, so he only was making a fire for a few pieces. Once the fire was lit and some meat was being cooked, he sat back and began to think more on what his plans were. He remembered from what he read about his father that he and the Raikage fought quite a bit in the Third Shinobi War, and from the stories he heard from Gigi that they had respect for each other. So he was thinking about asking the Raikage to help him out. He wondered what would come of it though. Worst case scenario, he would let the Kyuubi take over. With those thoughts in his head, he began to eat his meal and started to doze off. With Itachi and Kisame, both of them were severely annoyed by the little runt's stunt. They had been fooled. Damn that kid. Kisame muttered annoyed. Itachi just looked around for anything that could lead them in the right direction, but there was nothing. This only proves my point that he is more unpredictable and clever than before. We should have seen this coming. He most likely used shadow clones as a diversion so that we would follow tracks that weren't by the real one. Itachi said quickly. Kisame nodded, but his eyes were a different story. He wanted to gut the little runt for making fools out of them. What now? He asked his partner. Itachi looked at Kisame before replying. If he is headed to Kuma like we think, then he is delayed a bit. With his diversion, he most likely had to find a place to hide out, so I doubt he has made it that far. I think he may stop at Yuga since it's in the middle of his travel plan. We head there and wait for him, he said. Kisame nodded and they both started to head to the village. With Naruto. Naruto awoke groggily and looked around. He was still in his campsite. As he remembered all that transpired the day before, he sat up and began to think. He had no idea on the whereabouts of the two who were following him, and given the fact that he wasn't captured in his sleep, he assumed his ploy worked and he had lost them. However, he knew it wasn't over yet. No, not by a long shot. He was bound to run into an obstacle at one point. That was the life of a missing nin. It was what he chose, so he had to face it head on. Quickly gaining his bearings, he started again on his way towards Kumo. He knew he better stop at Yuga to get some more supplies. He didn't feel like getting another mask. He knew eventually it would be useless. It was about 2 hours later, and he saw the gates leading to the village of Yuga. He decided to take a cautious approach, just in case anyone knew who he was and if word got out he was a missing nin. He walked normally into the village and looked around for a bit. It seemed normal. No one was giving him suspicious looks or glares, he assumed he was good. However, the Kyuubi's voice in his head proved him wrong. Be on your guard, I sensed those same chakra signatures from the other day. They're here. Watch your back. He heard. Naruto cautiously looked around, but didn't find anyone who stood out to him. If they are close enough, can you pinpoint them? Naruto asked him. The Kyuubi was silent. Naruto should have known he could do that easily. He was planning something. What are you planning? He asked quickly. Naruto looked up to the sky as he replied. It's obvious we can't fight here. It would attract unwanted attention. We bait them into following us. Once you pick out who is following us, we show off a bit of power to get them to know it's us. Remember, I don't look like me anymore, so we need to let them know I'm who they are looking for. He explained. The Kyuubi chuckled. It was actually a pretty good plan. Okay, start walking around the village. Make yourself noticeable. Your black hair already sticks out like a sore thumb, so it shouldn't be hard to get their attention. He heard the Kyuubi. Naruto nodded and purposefully walked out in the open, stopping every few minutes looking around. He wanted them to see his face and know it was him. About 5 minutes later, he was walking towards a store when the Kyuubi spoke to him. They're behind you now, the ones in the robes. He heard suddenly. Naruto looked over his shoulder, and sure enough was two people in a pair of robes he hadn't seen before. However, he saw someone he thought he'd never see again. Itachi smirked at seeing the now black-haired Naruto. Kisame couldn't believe his eyes. This boy was the one who fooled them. He couldn't believe it at all. Itachi knew Naruto was a lot stronger and more clever than ever. Naruto gave them the finger and dashed towards the gate and into the wilderness. Kisame almost raged right there as he grabbed the handle of his sword. Calm down, Naruto is being cautious, no doubt. He wants us to follow him and take the fight outside this village. He was always clever. After all, he was a prankster. Itachi said suddenly. Kisame sighed and let go of Samehada and looked towards where Naruto went. Let's go already, he said quickly. They both left the village to find Naruto sitting atop a tree limb. He had a devious grin as the two appeared. Nice of you two to join me, huh? He joked. Kisame glared at him. Itachi just sighed and spoke. I must say, Naruto, you're no longer the same boy that lived in that village. You've become someone new, he said. Naruto chuckled at his observation. You're damn right, he said with a grin. Kisame was tired of the babble and pulled out Samehada and swung it as it extended towards Naruto. However, as it got close, Naruto poofed into smoke. A clone? Kisame muttered. Itachi looked around to see a ton of clones atop the trees. At least 50 of them were sitting there waiting for an order. Even he didn't think Naruto would plan this out that well. It was obvious he was expecting them. Who's helping you? Itachi asked suddenly. Kisame looked to Itachi. Someone was helping the runt? He quickly thought. Naruto just laughed and spoke up. You're right thinking I have help. You see, it is none other than the Kyuubi house, he said aloud. Both of them tensed. They hadn't expected that outcome. The Kyuubi was now something that made them rethink their plan. If he had been training with the nine-tailed fox, he was more powerful than before, and he would known this was coming, so he would have time to prepare. Naruto, on the other hand, knew these weren't easy opponents whatsoever. His best bet would be to separate them and have clones keep the other busy while he took care of the other one. He didn't know how, though. He had no idea how to separate them for a good bit. Kisame he could take on, however Itachi was a different story. The fact he had the Sharingan made that fact only concrete more. You take care of Kisame first, and then I'll take over and force Itachi to retreat, he heard suddenly. Naruto nodded and began to go to work. Suddenly every clone that was perched on the trees jumped down and charged at them. Itachi just dodged and jumped in the air. Quickly forming hand seals, he shot off a fireball towards the ground. It took out a few clones. Most of them jumped back to avoid it. Kisame, on the other hand, used Samehada in a whirlwind motion. However, he wasn't paying enough attention as the real Naruto dashed towards him and delivered a haymaker to his face. Naruto used that moment Kisame was stunned from the punch and delivered a knee to his gut. Kisame didn't even realize what was going on until he felt a massive wind pressure. He looked to Naruto to see him holding a Rasengan, and it was aimed at his chest. It was very close too. It was too late. Rasengan! Naruto shouted. That was when Kisame was sent flying into a tree. He was barely conscious. He sluggishly got up and was standing still. Itachi looked at his partner and sighed. He knew this was bound to happen. Naruto looked to the sword on the ground and smirked as he picked it up. As he did, both Itachi and Kisame's faces lit up in pure shock. How? Kisame stuttered, stupefied. Itachi couldn't believe it either. What do you mean? Naruto asked, confused. It was just a sword, right? He thought, confused. Samehada is a sentient sword. It picks its user. Most of the time spikes erupt out of the handle when someone who isn't worthy to wield it picks it up. Obviously it hasn't rejected you. I wonder why. Kisame explained. Naruto looked at the sword and sure enough, he wasn't being rejected by it. However, he felt it sapping at his chakra, little by little. It was the trade-off though. He knew it came with a price. It saps your chakra, right? He asked. Kisame nodded. Naruto wondered if the Kyuubi had something to do with it. Maybe since I'm a Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi, it likes my insane chakra reserves. He mused. Suddenly Itachi dashed forwards at blinding speeds. Naruto barely had enough time to put up the sword to block. As Itachi's fist met the blade, he stepped back. Naruto was starting to call on the Kyuubi's chakra. His body suddenly started to glow a bright orange. Itachi widened his eyes as the golden fire swirled around Naruto. "What is this fire?" he asked quickly. Naruto chuckled before replying. "It's called Fox Fire. It's a fire usable by kitsuns. As such, the Kyuubi is a kitsune and his chakra allows me to use it. As you've probably already noticed, it is very powerful," he explained. Itachi backed up and reevaluated his opponent. This was another unknown variable he hadn't expected. Suddenly Kisame stood back up. Naruto looked dryly at him. "Really, you want more?" he asked dryly. Kisame didn't even respond and charged. Naruto held Samehada up to block again. He knew this fight was about to end quickly. If he could just get Kisame down for good, then the Kyuubi could take over and take care of Itachi. Kisame was pretty much already dead, with no water around to use his jutsu. He was useless without Samehada. With a swift motion, Naruto swung the sword and it extended towards Kisame, piercing right through his chest. "Ironic, isn't it? Killed by the very sword I wielded," he muttered as he fell on the ground. Itachi sighed and looked at Naruto. "It's time to finish this," he said. Naruto didn't say anything. Itachi suddenly put his guard up when he felt the rise in chakra. "You're damn right, I'm gonna finish this," the Kyuubi said. Itachi backed up. This wasn't Naruto he was dealing with anymore. "Who are you?" he asked. The Kyuubi just chuckled and charged his chakra as three tails formed. "I think you know Itachi Uchiha." He spat out the last name. Itachi's eyes narrowed, then he closed them. When he opened them, it wasn't the normal Sharingan. They were the Mangekyo Sharingan. "Ah. Those accursed eyes you Uchiha are famous for. Unfortunately, they won't help you this time," the Kyuubi chuckled. Itachi narrowed his eyes as the Kyuubi formed a hand seal. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," he shouted. Itachi quickly looked around to see a ton of clones all in Kyuubi form and ready to attack. It was getting out of hand. Suddenly all of them charged at him. He was only able to dodge a few as more kept coming. He was suddenly elbowed in the gut and kicked backwards. "Amaterasu," Itachi muttered. He waved his hand and the black fire came towards the clones. Hitting a few of them, they disappeared. However, he wasn't paying attention and got hit by a fox fire-covered fist. Itachi quickly realized this situation was getting out of hand. He needed to retreat. The Kyuubi was an opponent he didn't want to take on alone. Seeing no choice, he vanished in a poof of smoke. "Shunshin-ha?" the Kyuubi chuckled. He then sat down and focused himself and came out of the tailed forms. With Naruto back in control, it was time again to start moving towards the destination. Naruto looked up to the sky as Itachi fled the scene. He knew he had an easy fight with Kisame. It was a matter of him already planning it out and having everything fall into place. He knew he wouldn't get that luxury again. They would know if he was trying to trick him. "So off to Konoha?" he heard the Kyuubi. Naruto blinked and wondered where this was going. "What's your plan?" the Kyuubi asked suddenly. Naruto sighed and realized the Kyuubi was right. He couldn't just walk into Kumo and speak to the Reikage without some sort of plan. That would be utterly foolish for him to do. The meeting would most likely cause quite a stir within the Reikage, and he would no doubt want to recruit him. Naruto didn't want that though. No, he wasn't planning on joining another village just for it to end up like the last one. He would have to play his cards right, and if went well and he got what he wanted, he would have no problem helping out the Reikage when he needed it. He was thinking of becoming something like a freelance mercenary. That would give him the chance to continue to explore and gain more skills as well, in addition to having influence with different Kages. "When we meet with him, he wouldn't really believe me that I'm Minato's son. So we need to convince him somehow, or you do," he started. The Kyuubi snorted and spoke up. "No doubt. You don't really look like the fourth with that hair color. I assume you want me to take over and talk to him when you mention your father?" the Kyuubi replied. Naruto nodded and began to think again. "We also can't let him blindside us. He will have an ulterior motive, no doubt. Everyone has something they want out of it. We need to keep the details in our favor, so we aren't being purposefully used," he continued. The Kyuubi laughed loudly after hearing Naruto. "Damn kid, I never thought I'd see the day when you actually used your brain," he joked. Naruto just shook his head while chuckling. It was time to get serious after all. He needed to be cautious. "What exactly are you hoping to get out of this meeting?" the Kyuubi asked suddenly. Naruto blinked. He hadn't really thought of that one. He sighed and sat down. Time to start going over what was essential and what could wait. "Firstly, we need Kumo to be a refuge of some sorts, preferably under the radar so no one gets wind of where I might be hiding out, if the need arises. Secondly, some training in Kenjutsu would be nice. Overall training would help too," he started. The Kyuubi was silent for a bit. "Personally, in my opinion, you should have left that sword there. However, with right training it will become a very useful weapon," he said. Naruto just shook his head and stood up. He was going to stop by Yuga again to get supplies, then head straight for Kumo. He needed to be careful though. He was sure that Tsunade would be sending teams out to bring him back, and if they were to find him it wouldn't be an easy fight. Hell no, it wouldn't. It was time for him to start building up on his skills a bit more. He might have to stop by a library again in Kumo, that is if he made it there first without interruptions. With those thoughts in his mind he headed off once again. Konoha. Tsunade was having quite a day. She had just heard Kakashi's report about the encounter with Naruto and Suna. He was officially a missing nin now, and nothing could change it. It was only going to get worse, she knew it too. The council already heard about his heritage and demanded that he be brought back. They were naive and foolish though. She knew he would never come back willingly. However, that didn't stop them. They wanted him to be found. More like demanded him. Even she, the Hokage, knew butting heads with the council was stupid. So she had requested 2 teams to meet her today at her office to brief them on their new mission. Those 2 teams were Team 8 and 10. Suddenly the door opened, revealing none other than those 2 teams. Asuma and Kurenai both stepped in first with their respective teams following behind them. Lady Tsunade, you requested us? Asuma asked curiously. Tsunade nodded and looked at everyone. I'm sure you know of Naruto Uzumaki's status as of late? She asked rhetorically. All of them nodded numbly. It was a very delicate subject nonetheless. A secret that was kept from most had been revealed, and the effects were still rippling throughout the village. Tsunade took a deep breath and prepared herself for what she was about to say next. Once she did, there was no going back whatsoever. Kakashi just filled me in about an encounter with Naruto at Suna. It seems he's bent on not returning. He made it very clear to both Sakura and Kakashi as they tried to subdue him, but ultimately failed. He escaped once again and is on the move again. She started. Everyone's eyes widened. Kakashi failed? Ino asked, shocked. Asuma and Kurenai obvious felt the same way. Kakashi was a person not to take lightly. Tsunade nodded numbly and continued where she left off. It seems he has gotten some training from the Kyuubi and has developed a type of fire he can use. Kakashi said he used it to blind them and escaped from there. She explained. Kurenai had a thoughtful expression on her face. Katan Jutsu? She asked suddenly. Everyone turned to her as she asked it. They turned to Tsunade to see her shaking her head. Kakashi said he didn't use any hand seals or call out any names. All he did was call on the Kyuubi's chakra and the fire started to form shortly afterwards. She said. Everyone was perplexed by that statement. If that was true, it meant he was obviously growing stronger and had very useful stuff at his disposal. Also, that fire was very powerful. If it didn't use his own chakra and wasn't a Katan Jutsu, it was obviously something they needed to watch out for. Your mission is to do the same thing Kakashi failed to do. Subdue him, not kill him. We need him back here. Now that everyone knows he's the son of the 4th Hokage, the council is foaming at the mouth to get him back. She explained. Everyone nodded. They wondered how this would all plan out. I'll leave the details on how you want to deal with it to yourselves. Just get it done, she said with finality. They all nodded and left the office. As they walked out, they started to talk among themselves. So how do we go about doing this? Kurenai asked aloud. Asuma thought about it for a good bit. If we can get him to come peacefully, that's good. However, we know that won't happen at all. Let's see, if he left Suna, he wouldn't stay in the land of wind that long, and he wouldn't go to Iwa. He must know how much they hate the name Namikaze. So Kumo? He said aloud. Shikamaru decided to speak up. Most likely, he knows he couldn't linger around Suna. He may act like an idiot, but he is fairly smart when it comes down to what matters. If he's serious about not coming back, he couldn't afford to make foolish decisions. He added. Kiba suddenly spoke up. You really think that dope can beat us all? 8v1 is a very unfair setup, he said indignantly. Shikamaru just shook his head and replied. Beat us? No. Outsmart us? Most likely, he isn't an idiot like most people think. How do you think he beat you at the Chunin exams? If he sets his mind to something, he can be very clever. I guarantee you that he has already anticipated the Hokage sending us. Due to our abilities and who we are, he most likely knows what to expect from us. It would be very hard to fight us all. So he is most likely coming up with a plan to deceive us, and I wouldn't be surprised if it worked. Shikamaru said aloud. Kiba shut up after that. He knew it was true. There was more to Naruto than what everyone saw. They didn't look past the goofy surface to see what was underneath. We're also about 3 to 4 days away from Kumo, not counting setting up camp every night. That only adds more to his advantage, Shikamaru added. Asuma looked up to the sky as he spoke. Shikamaru is right, this won't be a run-of-the-mill mission. Combined with the tutelage of the Kyuubi, Naruto is even more dangerous and unpredictable, he said. Kiba noticed Hinata was fiddling with her fingers. He knew she was thinking about something. Most likely Naruto. What's the matter, Hinata? He asked curiously. Everyone stopped and turned to the shy girl. She looked up and spoke. I don't understand why Naruto turned out like this, she explained. Shino, surprisingly, was the one to speak up after her. What would you think if you suddenly found out you were being lied to your whole life, and on top of that having to keep a secret yourself such as the Kyuubi, and carrying such a burden along with it? No wonder he finally snapped from it all, he said quickly. Everyone turned to him as he spoke. They were shocked he would come up with that answer. However, they knew it was the truth. Kurenai turned to Kiba to ask him a question. Kiba, you should be able to track Naruto by his scent? She asked. Everyone turned to him, waiting for his answer. He thought about it for a good bit. It was possible. It's possible. His scent may have changed, depending on what he does to keep himself from not being recognized. We know from Kakashi's report he changed his appearance quite a bit, so we know it's going to be hard to find him. to track him I would need something to start off with, so I know what scent to look for," he answered. Shikamaru looked in thought for a moment. "Like a piece of cloth or something?" he said. Kiba nodded and spoke up. "A piece of his clothes would be perfect," he replied. Before anyone knew they were breaking into his old apartment to get just that. As they did, Kiba finally got what he needed and they were heading out to the gates of the village. "So how should we go about doing this?" Asuma asked suddenly. Shikamaru spoke up quickly after that. "I think we should stay together, with all of us. It's harder for him to get away. With Kiba's tracking we know that we can find him. All of us have our own specialties and techniques, and if we use them together, we have a better chance," he said aloud. Everyone nodded and they began on their way towards the Land of Lightning. It was the day after when everyone was continuing on towards Kumo. They had recently entered the Land of Hot Water when Kiba stopped suddenly. Kurenai was the first to notice it and looked at him confused. "What's wrong, Kiba?" she asked suddenly. Everyone turned to him as Akamaru and him were sniffing the air. It seemed he caught something. However, it wasn't Naruto's scent. "I smell a dead body. It's foul like it's been sitting there," he said suddenly. Everyone widened their eyes as Akamaru started to bark and run into the woods. Kiba took off and everyone followed him. A dead body meant one thing: there was a fight between two or more people and someone paid the ultimate price, their life. Everyone stopped shortly after to see a body lying face down in the dirt. It was wearing robes that none of them recognized. They were all cautious as Asuma rolled the body over. They were looking at the dead body of Kisame Hashigaki. "Hey, I recognize this guy. He's in the bingo books." Kisame Hashigaki, AS rank missing nin, known as the monster of the hidden mist, Asuma said suddenly. Everyone turned to him as he said that. They were shocked this guy was defeated. "Do you think Naruto is responsible for this?" Ino asked. Everyone looked to Kurenai and Asuma as they looked at each other, like they were having a silent conversation. "If he did, he got him by surprise. This area has the perfect makings for a setup for a trap. Looks like he walked into it. His sword is gone too. Naruto most likely took it as a prize, and it would be a very useful sword to wield," Asuma said suddenly. Shikamaru looked in thought for a second. "What sword?" Kiba suddenly asked. Everyone else wanted to know that as well. Kisame Hashigaki was known to carry a sword by the name of Samahada, one of the swords that the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, and it is renowned for being the most dangerous and terrifying of all of them. It can be very dangerous if wielded right, Kurenai answered. They all looked shocked after that statement. If Naruto was the one who did this, then it only proves my point that we need to tread with caution. If we don't, we may wind up walking right into a trap, Shikamaru said suddenly. Everyone nodded and looked around for anything that could lead them in the right direction. Ino kneeled near the body to examine it. "The wound isn't fresh, the blood has already dried. This was done a day or two ago. It's laid here ever since," she said. Everyone sighed as they realized what it meant. He was a good bit ahead of them. They needed to catch up quickly. "We better get back on track," Kiba said. Everyone nodded and they left the area and started heading towards Kumo. With Naruto was close to Kumo, about an hour or so if he walked. However, he was going at a faster pace. He stopped at Yusa to get some more supplies earlier. He picked up a few ninja tools that would help him. He knew Tsunade would send a team or two to retrieve him, so he needed to be prepared for when they met. He knew it wasn't going to be friendly. They would most likely use force, however not lethal force. Tsunade would have their asses if he came back in a body bag. He planned on stopping at Kumo's library before requesting to meet with the Raikage. He needed to learn a few things. Those things were going to help him when he faced the teams that were sent to get him. Before he knew it, he was already walking through the hidden cloud village. He liked the way it looked. Eventually he spotted the Raikage tower, but he knew that was for later. It was obvious he was an outsider. He got some curious glances here and there, but they were hostile or vicious. He chuckled as he walked into the village's library. He continued to ignore the obvious stares and looked for a few books he was needing. They were about psychological warfare, underhanded tactics. Anything that remotely revolved around deception and guerrilla warfare really would work for him as of now. After searching for a good 25 minutes, he found a couple of books he was going to learn from. They had some good titles that drew him in. They were The Psyche, How It Works and Art of War, Divide and Conquer. Before anyone knew it, a quick shout of Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and a clone appeared and sat down next to the real Naruto. After an hour of reading the two books, he had a good understanding of how to effectively use psychological-based attacks and how to use your situation to your advantage with traps and setups. He knew with what he learned he would be able to take on a team now. It was now time to meet the Raikage. "Are you ready, kid?" he heard the QB. Naruto nodded and left the library and headed towards the tower where the meeting that no one would ever forget would happen. As soon as he stepped in the building, he was instantly stopped. They knew he wasn't from around here. They were definitely suspicious. It was shortly after when a young man with dark skin and white hair that covered his left eye walked in front of Naruto and spoke in a slightly bored but highly cautious tone. "Who are you and why are you here?" he asked quickly. Naruto should have known this would happen. "I'm here to speak to the Raikage regarding a certain fellow that is known as the Yellow Flash," he said aloud for everyone to hear. He watched subtly to see their reactions. It was instantaneous. They all tensed and were on guard after hearing those two words. They all knew about the power that Minato Namikaze had and how much fear he spread with his famous techniques. The man in front of him narrowed his eyes. Who are you? How do you know that name? He asked, deadly serious. Naruto gave him a serious look. What I have to say must only be said in a private audience with the Raikage himself, he said calmly. The man didn't back down and spoke in a deadly calm tone. You say that and you obviously radiate the word secret. After all, you have a very famous sword on your back. Where is Kisame Hashigaki? He said aloud. Naruto chuckled and replied, Shark face? Check the forest by Yuga. If you find his dead body, you'd know the answer. He joked. The man's eyes widened. Kisame was defeated by this boy. The situation suddenly turned 180. He needed to keep it under control. This boy was an unknown and he needed to proceed with caution. You defeated Kisame? He asked disbelievingly. Naruto nodded and spoke again. Itachi Uchiha was with him, however he got away, he said calmly. Now this surprised everyone. The traitor who slaughtered the whole Uchiha clan with ease ran away from this kid? They all thought. The man finally relented and spoke up. Very well, follow me and don't make any sudden movements, he said deadly serious. Naruto nodded and followed him as they walked up a staircase. He didn't fail to notice two people were following behind him. They're Jinchuriki kid, watch out, he heard the Kyuubi say in his head. Naruto hummed to himself and didn't look back at the two of them. He didn't want to raise any suspicion now. They soon arrived at a large door and the man in front of them walked in. He came out shortly after and motioned for Naruto to come inside. Sitting in his desk with a stern, yet inquisitive look was the fourth Raikage himself. Once everyone was inside, Naruto looked around the room, also taking subtle glances at the positions of everyone. It was planned out. The girl was stationed by the door, while the two men were behind the Raikage. This meeting was going to be tense. Now my right-hand man Dari here says you have some words to speak to me about a very important person that everyone knows the name of. Minato Namikaze? The Raikage said quickly. Naruto nodded and chuckled. Also that you defeated AS rank missing Nin Kisame Hashigaki? The proof is that very sword you have on your back, he said again. Naruto nodded again, and when the Raikage didn't speak again, he knew it was time for him to speak up. Now before I start, I'd like you to not judge me or jump to conclusions until you hear my full story, he said. Everyone raised an eyebrow, but nonetheless they complied. Firstly, I'm a missing Nin from Konoha, he said. Everyone tensed and almost drew their weapons. However, the Raikage's hand went up to stop them. His eyes were hardened though, watching for any deceit. I'm sure you all have heard the story of the attack on Konoha by the Kyuubi, Naruto asked. They all nodded. The Raikage was wondering where this was going. Yes, we do, however that doesn't explain your missing Nin status, he said. Naruto sighed and spoke up. You see, the story that is told today is an abridged version to hide the truth, Naruto explained calmly. Everyone wondered what was about to be said. What's the full story then? The girl behind him asked. Naruto sighed. He knew once he said it there was no going back. His secret would be out. The reason I'm here today is for a number of reasons actually. It revolves around a lot actually. Back to the actual story, you see it is told that the fourth Hokage, Minato himself sacrificed himself to kill the Kyuubi. That is not the truth though. Granted it is somewhat, but not the full truth, he said. Everyone's eyes widened. Raikage was starting to have a sneaky suspicion where this was going. What's the truth then? He asked. Naruto sighed and looked directly at him. Minato Namikaze didn't kill the Kyuubi, he sealed it in his newborn son. That is me, Naruto Uzumaki, he said calmly. The whole room tensed, then everyone laughed loudly. It was obvious they didn't believe him. The Raikage was furious though. You dare spit those lies? You insult the memory of the very person who sacrificed himself to save your village. Be glad he did, or that monster would have obliterated your home, he shouted while slamming his fist on the desk. Naruto sighed and knew it was time for plan B. However, before he could speak up, he fell on his knees. Yo bro, what's with the demonic flow? The man next to the Raikage said suddenly. Everyone looked at the kneeling form of Naruto. I sense it too, it's rageful, the girl said. It seems they may have pissed off the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi had taken over forcefully. He sneered at the Raikage as he stood back up. It seems the Raikage didn't notice the Kyuubi taking over and laughed again. You can quit the act, kid, he said. The Kyuubi gave a dark chuckle and everyone tensed. The voice was deeper and more demonic when it spoke. Kid? I'm no kid, old man. I've lived longer than you have. You insult the legacy of the very man you fought in that war, by not seeing the resemblance between Minato and his own flesh and blood. Granted, he did change his appearance to avoid him being recognized by the same people he left on his own will. The Kyuubi spat out. The Raikage's eyes widened and no words were formed to combat what he was hearing. Everyone else was the same way. I am that very monster you said that was attacking that village that day. However, I was being controlled. This child is the offspring of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. The Kyuubi growled. Nobody had expected this. It seemed this meeting was about to take a huge turn, a gigantic one. In a certain office that was occupied by 5 individuals, the atmosphere was extremely tense. For a very big reason, and everyone in there was starting to understand why. The Raikage had insulted the Kyuubi and forced him to take control and stir the place up a bit. Everyone felt the chakra that he was radiating. It meant that what Naruto had said was true, and they most likely weren't the first ones to know. Konoha most likely wanted him back, which left them at a standstill on what to do. Who are you? The Raikage asked quickly. He narrowed his eyes. He didn't want to give in that quickly. Foolish man, I'm the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto Uzumaki is my Jinchuriki, you should know what this means. He snarled. The Raikage's eyes widened. This was the real deal. His brain went into hyperdrive thinking about what to do. So it's true? The girl asked suddenly. The Raikage nodded numbly. They were looking at the real deal. The son of the Yondaime Hokage himself, they understood the gravity of the situation. Can you let Naruto back in control? The Raikage asked respectfully. He didn't want to make a mistake. This situation was a ticking time bomb. The Kyuubi slowly nodded and the immense pressure disappeared when Naruto regained control. Naruto Uzumaki, I hate to admit it, but I'm sorry for what was said earlier. The Raikage said quickly. Naruto nodded and began to speak up. Now that we got that ugly stuff out of the way, let's get down to business. Naruto said quickly. It was time to get everything settled. The Raikage nodded. I'm sure you could guess my reasons for leaving Konoha. If you want a bit more clarification on the reasons, here's the short story. Me being the container for the Kyuubi and combined with my heritage being unknown to only a few select people, I'm sure you can figure out the people's view on me. He said. The Raikage's eyes widened, putting the pieces together. It did make sense. They despise you, they thought you were a demon. I can see why you left. He said softly. Naruto nodded numbly. Everyone was starting to understand what he felt. Jinchuriki were most often, if not, outcasts of the village. I was tired of being lied to. I didn't even know about my parents until the Kyuubi told me. I couldn't take it, and I finally decided to relent and take the Kyuubi's offer. He explained. The Raikage widened his eyes, believing the same Biji you held was very foolish and would most likely end up with you dead. But this boy took a leap of faith and look where it got him. What was the Kyuubi's offer? The Raikage asked. Naruto chuckled and answered the man. He told me that I could stay at the village and watch as no real improvement happened, or I could escape and becoming a missing nin and start my new life. He also said in exchange for a few favors he would train me how to use his chakra and abilities. Naruto explained. Everyone's eyes widened for the umpteenth time that day. It seemed the shocks just kept coming. This boy was truly something else. Now what have you come here for? The Raikage asked quickly. Everyone looked to Naruto as he sighed and began to speak up. Truthfully, I come with an offer. He said. The Raikage's interest rose at hearing this. He motioned for him to continue as everyone listened to him. As of now, I don't have a home, and I'm not saying I want to be tied down to a village. I'm offering my support as a freelance mercenary, in exchange for asylum, if needed, and some training to help me out in my travels. He said. No one was expecting that. He clearly thought this whole meeting out accordingly. The Raikage was weighing the deal in his mind. If he accepted, he would get a very powerful ally that would only grow stronger in the future. A refuge wasn't that hard either. The training though made him think a bit more on it. What kind of training? He asked. Naruto looked at him and replied. Firstly, Kenjutsu to help my skill with this sword, and one right Unjutsu. He simply said. Naruto was trying to keep it as simple as he could to help his situation. The Raikage looked and thought again. The terms weren't that bad. He could handle them. However, there was questions he needed to ask himself. Let's put a hypothetical out there and say you do become a freelance mercenary. Who all are you going to give your allegiance to? He asked quickly. Naruto looked directly at him and replied. I would give it to Suna, Konoha, if the situation was dire enough for me to help them. However, Konoha isn't one of my priorities now. I would stay away from Iwa and Kiri. He said. The Raikage smiled and knew this could work out. He looked at Naruto and spoke. If we are to do this, we must keep it a secret. We need a way to get in contact with each other. He said. Naruto nodded and thought about it. I could give you a summoning contract for foxes. You'd have enough to go back and forth between any village you allied with. The Kyuubi said suddenly. That's when Naruto's eyes widened. He still had the toad contract. They could reverse summon him. He would need to break it firstly. The Kyuubi said he could give me a summoning contract for foxes. That way we could send messages back and forth. He said. The Raikage thought about it for a minute. It was a pretty good idea and it would keep the secret from getting out. Okay, then that will work. He said with a smile. Naruto was about to speak up when he felt something off, with the recent use of the Kyuubi's chakra. It seemed to blend with his, thus granting him stronger control over it, and it gave him enhanced senses. One of these was sensing chakra. You sense it, right? He asked the Kyuubi. Everyone saw his silence, and wondered what was up. Yes, a gigantic amount of it, most likely those two teams together. Their chakra is on the outskirts of Kumo. He heard. Excuse me, Raikage, but it seems there is a problem. Naruto said suddenly. The Raikage's eyebrows raised as he heard him. What do you mean? He asked cautiously. Naruto sighed and explained. It seems Konoha isn't letting up on retrieving me. Thanks to the Kyuubi's influence, I have gained heightened senses. I can feel a large mass of chakra outside Kumo. It's two teams together that were sent for me. I have to deal with them. He explained. The man, Dari, spoke up. How do you plan to deal with two genin teams? He asked. Naruto smirked. He had already anticipated this situation and planned accordingly. If it is the teams I think they are, I have a plan to deal with them, knowing it would damage the relationship between Konoha and Kumo if I were to be seen fighting in the village. I already came up with it beforehand. I'm going to deal with them outside the village, so Konoha doesn't suspect Kumo's involvement," he said. Everyone was shocked. The Raikage was impressed too. The kid was seriously something else. The Raikage nodded. "Very well, we will continue this meeting after you have dealt with them," he said. Naruto thanked him and left the tower to put his plan into motion, back inside of the office where everyone else who was present for the first part of the meeting. "So what do you guys think of him?" the Raikage asked. The girl was the first to speak up. "He is obviously not to be underestimated. Just by the way he spoke shows he can handle himself, and can adapt to a situation if the need arose," she said. Darui nodded and spoke up. "He clearly wasn't lying about being the Yellow Flash's son. Yujito is right. He will be a force to reckon with if he has the right tutelage. Add that to the QB and it only adds more to it. His offer wasn't that bad either," he added. The Raikage nodded and turned to the other man in the room. "What do you think about him, B?" he asked curiously. B looked in thought for a moment. "He is very powerful indeed. Those who cross him will bleed," he said softly. Yujito wondered what was going to happen to the two teams that were sent for him. If she did know, it would only concrete the fact that he was someone not to take lightly. "I wonder what those teams will face," she asked aloud. They all were wondering what would happen. They would just have to ask him when he got back. Outside Kumo, as Team 8 and 10 were walking along the road to Kumo, they suddenly stopped when they heard something. It sounded like a person, and it was behind them. They turned to see a little girl about 7 years old. Her shirt was stained with tears. They were shocked at seeing someone like this. "Your ninja's right? You have to help me," she screeched. They weren't expecting that. Kurenai was the one who spoke up. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. The girl sniffed and replied, "My big brother is being held hostage by someone," she said. They widened their eyes and then narrowed them. Naruto wouldn't do that? Would he? That's what they all thought. Being the kind souls they were, they knew they had to help. "Lead the way, little one." Ino smiled. The girl nodded and turned around and started to run into the forest with everyone following her. If they were to see her face, they would see her with a devious smirk. Warning, a bit graphic. Soon after 5 minutes of running, they came across a thick part of the forest, tree dotted everywhere they could see. However, something caught Ino's eye. Tied against a tree was what seemed to be a boy with dark hair and torn clothes. He couldn't be more than 10 years old. He was covered in dirt, and his eyes showed he was tired. Ino didn't even think about it, and ran forwards, ignoring the cries of everyone else. And that is what started it all. "Ino, wait up!" Shikamaru yelled. They quickly followed her to find the boy tied. They were all shocked and angry. "Who did this to you?" Asuma asked seriously. The boy looked up with defeated eyes and replied in an emotionless tone. "A boy with spiky black hair. He said I was needed for something," he said softly. Ino almost cried and looked at Asuma with a glare as he took his knuckle blades out and went to cut the ropes holding the boy. When the boy was finally free, they realized what had happened. It transformed into a clone of Naruto. It was a henge all along. "Shit!" Shikamaru cursed. He looked to see a line of explosion tags set up purposefully exactly where they were. It was too late though. A gigantic explosion rocked the forest as trees started to fall haphazardly. It was obvious that Naruto was using the situation to his advantage. The explosions kicked up a ton of dust, creating a window for Naruto to move into action. Kurenai suddenly screamed out as she felt something stab her in the back. "Kurenai!" Asuma screeched out. There was only a little bit of visibility. Quickly Asuma used a wind jutsu to clear the area. They all looked to Kurenai to see a saban sticking in her. They looked to see Ino down unconscious. Naruto had already proven he had what it took to take them out. Asuma quickly pulled the saban out to see a green liquid on the tip. "A poison?" Asuma said aloud. Suddenly Kurenai felt her eyelids get heavy and she collapsed on the ground, knocked out. "Quickly, back to back!" Shikamaru shouted. There were 6 left. Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba, Hinata, Shino and Asuma. "We fell into his trap. We should have known he would do something like this to get us," Asuma said aloud. Suddenly an insane laugh pierced their ears. It sounded like it was coming from everywhere. They couldn't pinpoint the source. Hinata started to get a bit creeped out and scared. "Where are you at, Dobe?" Kiba shouted angrily. Hinata was too scared and started to run away. That's when a clone jumped down and grabbed her. "Sorry for this, Hinata," he said. With one quick chop to her neck, he laid her down unconscious. The group didn't seem to notice the fact he was missing Samahata and that he was a clone. "You bastard! Why are you being like this?" Kiba roared. The clone smirked and looked at Kiba. "Hey Kiba, I got a question for you," the clone said suddenly. Everyone looked at him while he continued. "Do you and Akamaru sniff each other's butts? I mean, you are a flea-ridden mutt after all?" He mocked. Kiba started to growl as the clone was speaking. "What? Does the mongrel have something to say? Go on, mutt, say something," he said quickly. Kiba stepped forward as the clone smirked. Shikamaru went to speak, however the clone already did what it needed to do. It gave Kiba the finger and dashed in the opposite direction. "Get back here, you bastard!" Kiba roared. Kiba then chased after him. However, he should have known he was walking right into another trap. A few moments later more explosions were heard. Soon after, the clone came back with Kiba's unconscious body. They were glaring at him as he dropped the body by Hinata's. "Why are you doing this, Naruto?" Shikamaru asked through gritted teeth. No one tried anything. They knew if they did try anything, something would go wrong, and they would be down another member. They had no doubt that Naruto had more up his sleeves. "That's very easy to answer, Shikamaru. I'm a missing nin with no reason to return to that hellhole. Yet the same village demands that they want me back just because I'm Minato Namake's son. They really think that all those years of me being outcast as the demon fox wouldn't affect my decisions?" The clone answered. Asuma finally noticed something was off. "You're a clone, right? There's no Samahata on your back," he said aloud. The clone chuckled and nodded. "You're right, I am just a clone. That doesn't mean I'm going to tell you where the real one is." The clone smirked. Everyone was silent as the clone continued. "I'm here to relay a message. Give up and don't try again. If you don't heed my warning, I'll be forced to use more effective methods," the clone said. Suddenly everyone tensed as the clone walked towards them. Suddenly it poofed into smoke and disappeared. "I think we should take the kid's offer and leave while we still can," Choji said aloud. Shikamaru grunted, but nonetheless couldn't agree more. They had failed, horribly. He had lured them straight into a trap. "I agree, if he was able to fool us this much, imagine what he could do if we pissed him off," Shikamaru added. Asuma nodded and looked around the area. Naruto really did have them against the wall. If they didn't leave as he told them to, he would most likely unleash more and they wouldn't stand a chance. Naruto's skill set was too unorthodox, and combined with his knowledge of pranks, it only made it stack in his favor. "Okay, everyone pick up someone and let's head back," Asuma said aloud. Everyone nodded and picked someone and hoisted them on their shoulders. Soon they all arrived back on the road. However, they stopped and turned around when they heard someone drop behind them. It was Naruto, and it was not a clone. The four of them were shocked to see his new appearance. It made him look intimidating. Pitch black spiky hair, he was wearing a dark leather combat jacket with matching baggy shorts. It was obvious to them he was definitely ready to strike at a moment's notice. The jacket most likely held all his ninja tools. The sword Samahata was strapped to his back. They could see the tip of it exposed, and it didn't have bandages covering it. Yep, he was truly ready to strike if the need arose. "What do you want?" Shikamaru asked. Naruto sighed and placed his hands in a surrender motion to placate them. "Deliver a message to Bachan for me, also that pervert Jiraiya. Tell them this, I won't be coming back yet, eventually though. I have stuff that needs to be taken care of. Also tell Kakashi and Sakura to stuff it, along with those snot-nosed elders on the council." He smirked. They were flabbergasted. Part of them knew he would still protect his precious people if the situation called for his intervention. However, part of them knew he was never going to be the same. They nodded numbly and watched as he turned around and walked towards Kumo again. "Well, that was surprising," Choji said dryly. Shikamaru chuckled and spoke up. "What do you expect? Naruto was always that type to never abandon his friends, and by the looks of it, that hasn't changed. He just got his life together and his priorities straight," he said aloud. Asuma definitely agreed with Shikamaru. It was obvious to them that Naruto was going to grow stronger than anyone could imagine. He also wouldn't forget his roots. This was his chance for a new, better life, one that would shake the world. Tsunade's day wasn't expecting the outcome once again, however Naruto's message gave her hope. She wondered how long it would be before they saw their favorite knucklehead shinobi. Jiraiya was in the room along with Kakashi, Sakura and the two teams that had recently returned. "Can you describe how he took most of you out?" Tsunade asked quickly. Asuma nodded and spoke up. "It seems he knew we were coming. He used basic principles to get at us. He baited us and took us out one by one, using stealth and unorthodox moves to get us," he said. Jiraiya wanted to hear this. He wanted to know how much stronger his pupil had become. "Define unorthodox," Tsunade said. Shikamaru was the one to speak up. "He was using underhanded tactics to get us. He lured us into a trap that had no escape route. He knew that we'd have to fight our way out. First there was a line of explosive tags set up to explode. Then he used the debris and dust in the air to make his move and took out Kurenai with a poison Senbon. It was intended to make her sleep. He then started to use psychological warfare on Hinata and Kiba. Then he gave his warning. He knew that our numbers were down and would have to retreat eventually." Shikamaru explained. Sakura burst out laughing. "You're lying. There's no way Naruto could be that clever," she said arrogantly. Shikamaru glared at her and spoke in a cold tone. "You really don't know Naruto then. It's obvious he isn't as dumb as everyone thinks. He used his environment and situation to his advantage. If you don't believe me, why don't you make the 3-day trip to Kumo and try to take him by force? See if that works for you when he sends you back humiliated." He scoffed. Kiba held back a laugh as Sakura shut up. Kakashi just shook his head at his student's lack of ability to see the truth. "Any idea when he would return?" Jiraiya asked aloud. No one had an answer. Asuma was the one to speak up. He said he'd do it eventually, after taking care of some stuff first. However, who knows how long that could be? He shrugged. Tsunade sighed. She just had to hope that it would be soon. "Okay then, you are free to go. Jiraiya, I have a mission for you though," she said suddenly. Everyone nodded and left the room, while Jiraiya stayed behind. What is it? He asked. She sighed and looked out the window at the village she held responsibility for. This is a mission to help ease my worries. I want you to go to Kumo and find Naruto. This isn't a retrieval mission though, just pick his brain and see how he is doing, she said. Jiraiya was surprised, but nonetheless nodded. Soon he was already on his way towards the land of lightning. Kumo. Naruto found himself walking in the Raikage Tower currently. Darui instantly noticed him and walked up to him. He got a lot of odd looks and some cautious. It seemed that word spread about him. I take it you dealt with them? Darui asked. Naruto nodded. Darui gave a nod and turned around and motioned for him to follow him. Soon they were back again in the office of the Raikage and everyone was present again. The Raikage smiled at seeing the kid back. It seemed this could work out actually. Now that you're back, let's rough out the edges a bit of our deal, he said. Naruto nodded and listened as he continued. Let's get a few things right. First, you want the option of asylum if the need arises in your travels. As a freelance mercenary you would work for Suna, Konoha and Kumo. For your support if we need it, you want training in Kenjutsu and one right on Jutsu? He clarified. Naruto nodded as those were the terms. The Raikage nodded and continued. Asylum isn't a problem, so that one is cleared. As a freelance mercenary we need a way to communicate. You said the Kyuubi would grant you a contract for foxes. That one is cleared. Now about training, we can train you in Kenjutsu. One right on technique is fine too. These are the terms listed. Do you have any problems? He asked for clarification. He knew Naruto would say yes, however he needed it for the paperwork. Naruto nodded and the Raikage smiled and stood up. Well then I have to say it will be a pleasure working with you, Naruto Uzumaki. Now on to a more personal matter, he said suddenly. Naruto blinked and listened as he continued. I would like B to test your strength in a friendly spar, he said. Naruto grinned and replied. Sure, but what are the restrictions of this spar? He asked. The Raikage put his hand to his chin as he thought. Let's leave it at, no lethal moves, anything else is fine. First one to surrender loses, he said. Naruto nodded and started to follow the rest of them as they walked outside and towards a training ground. Soon everyone except B and Naruto stood on the outside. Yo bro, let's go, B said quickly. Naruto nodded and replied. Don't hold back. I want to be pushed to my limits, Naruto said. Everyone else widened their eyes. The Raikage smiled at seeing how the kid was. He faced fear head-on and didn't care of the outcome. He knew how powerful his foe was and it didn't stop him. B suddenly got into a stance that surprised Naruto. The Raikage smirked and everyone else widened their eyes. What the? Naruto muttered. I wonder how Naruto will face B's acrobat stance. Yujito muttered. Everyone else wanted the same thing. Keep your guard up, this won't be an easy fight. This is a pure test of your skill, there won't be any chances for you to deceive and ambush your opponent, the Kyuubi said suddenly. Naruto nodded and charged. He was testing the waters to see how B would react. Darui noticed this and instantly picked up what he was doing. He smiled, knowing the kid could be a very talented shinobi in the future. Naruto didn't know what to expect. If he knew how this stance worked he wouldn't have charged in foolishly. In a split second B made a weird move. It was like a dance move. He quickly did a one-handed handstand and his legs moved in a whirlwind motion. Naruto felt his cheek get sliced and the foot of the man kicked him and sent him flying back. What was that? Naruto thought. The Kyuubi was silent for a good bit. It seems this man has created a taijutsu stance that is as unorthodox and unpredictable. It's a tough one to get past, no doubt. It leaves him with quite the advantage. If you get in close he would easily take you down, the Kyuubi said. He was hinting at something. Naruto understood what he had to do now. Everyone watched as he formed a hand seal. The Raikage was watching intently now. It seemed he was making his move. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto shouted. Suddenly 12 clones appeared and surrounded B. Darui suddenly got a bit more interested in the fight. Yujito was watching very closely. He was using the clones to help combat B's stance. She wondered how it would play out from here on. Shadow clones, huh? The Raikage smiled. This spar was becoming better and better as time went on. Suddenly all the clones started to turn to each other. Everyone wondered what was going on. Suddenly every two clones picked up a third and launched it towards B. It was then everyone felt the increased wind pressure, the look to the real Naruto to see the chakra swirling in his left hand. Is that? Yujito asked aloud, stupefied. The Raikage nodded numbly. The Rasengan, Darui muttered. Naruto quickly charged as the clones were still airborne. B suddenly threw his swords, quickly dispelling the clones. He looked to the other clones charging in behind the ones he just finished off. He turned to the real Naruto to see him closing in with the Rasengan. However, something Naruto did shocked everyone, even B. He slammed the Rasengan into the ground, kicking up a ton of dust and debris from the released wind pressure. Ah! He used the power of the Rasengan to create a makeshift smokescreen, Yujito said suddenly. Darui nodded and looked at the fight unfolding. The kid's impressive, using the basic tactics in a fight to gain an advantage, the Raikage said. Yujito looked at the Raikage in shock. Raikage-sama? Those are basics? She asked in shock. The Raikage laughed and explained. The techniques aren't, but the way he used them are basic. First he tested the waters to see how B would react. Then he used his clones to make B choose which one he would let through his defenses. After that he used the Rasengan to destroy some of the terrain to create a bit of a smokescreen like you said. He explained. Yujito stood silent as she watched the battle unfold. Darui was seriously impressed with the kid's practical thinking, no doubt about it. This kid was something else. They might actually be witnessing the rebirth of the Yellow Flash. If this kid continued to impress him, he might just have to take it upon himself to teach him a few things. He was wanting to learn Kenjutsu and a right Unjutsu. Show me what you can do, Naruto Uzumaki. Darui thought to himself. Naruto had a window now that made it so he could do something. However, it was short. There was no doubt in his mind that B had something to help him out of this situation. So he had to be fast. He charged in with extremely sharp kunai. He let his senses guide him. He quickly stabbed B with the kunai in an unknown place, and used it towards his leverage and held on to the embedded kunai, and did a sweep and knocked B off his feet. Suddenly the dust and debris cleared, giving everyone a look at the scene. They saw B on the ground and Naruto moving to strike. However, as Naruto went to continue his assault, B turned into a log. Kawarimi. He cursed. He turned around to see B behind him. Yo bro, that was a good move, though it's time for you to prove, he said aloud. Suddenly B jumped backwards and held his right arm up with the fist upwards. Everyone there got wide eyes as they knew what was coming. Reikage-sama! Are you sure you're gonna let this go on? Yujito screeched. The Reikage just put up his hand. He stared intently at the battle with hardened eyes. Let's see what happens, Darui said dryly. However, his eyes were watching intently at Naruto. How will you face this, Naruto Uzumaki? He thought quickly. Yo bro, you best dodge, or your head will dislodge, B said. Naruto knew he was going to do something very dangerous. He felt he had no choice to do something equal. Sighing, he knew what he needed to do. He hoped he didn't lose control. Everyone watched as Naruto closed his eyes. It was obvious he was doing something. Then they all felt the demonic chakra. The chakra started to grow as he charged it. Yujito noticed his features starting to change. He's calling on the fox's chakra, she said. Everyone watched closely as the red chakra covered. However, he wasn't done yet. Soon the chakra started to liquefy and bubble as it became transparent. They watched as Two Tails grew and were shocked when he opened his eyes. He got into a pounce position and waited for his moment to strike. It seems that when Naruto goes into his tailed forms, he starts to fight like an animal or beast, making him more unpredictable. It might just help him dodge B's attack, Yujito said aloud. Everyone watched as lightning formed on B's arm and he charged. Naruto ran on all fours to meet him. He jumped just in time to hover right above the arm that was aimed at him. He quickly used his claws to tear at the arm as B rushed by. He dodged the lariat of Killer B, and got a hit in as well. They were impressed, no doubt. B quickly powered down, and walked over towards Naruto. They all watched as Naruto closed his eyes and started to regulate his breathing. He kept his mind clear and eventually dissipated the demonic chakra of the QB. He opened his eyes to see all four of them with smiles. Yo bro, nice spar, you'll go far, B said with a grin. He held his fist out. Naruto smiled and bumped his fist. So it's fair to say this boy has what it takes, the Reikage asked loudly. Everyone nodded. Darui stepped over to the Reikage and whispered something in his ear. The Reikage's eyes widened and looked at Darui sharply. Are you sure? He asked seriously. Darui nodded with a strong face. The Reikage smiled and nodded back. Then I say this, good luck, Naruto Uzumaki, he said to Naruto. Naruto blinked and spoke up. Good luck with what? He asked confused. The Reikage chuckled and replied. Darui has asked personally to train you in Kenjutsu and the right Unjutsu you wanted, he said with a grin. Naruto blinked and widened his eyes. He already had a trainer? This was going a lot faster than he thought. Darui looked at Naruto for a second. I feel like you will have the potential to change the shinobi world forever, if we're gonna do this. We need to do it right, he said with a smile. Naruto nodded and listened as the Reikage spoke up. So how long do you think you're gonna stay before heading out? He asked quickly. Naruto thought about it for a good bit. I think 2 weeks is enough to get a good bit of training in, and figure the rest of the details out, he said. The Reikage nodded and looked to Darui to continue. I have duties in the morning, so in the evenings we will meet here to start your training. I'm warning you, I'm not going to go easy on you. I'm going to be blunt and straight to the point. That way you'll learn it, and won't forget it, he said. Naruto nodded. So what do you think you're gonna do in the mornings? Yujito suddenly asked, intrigued. Naruto thought about it for a moment before replying. Sage mode training and what the Kyuubi will train me in, he answered. They all were impressed that Naruto was working on Senjutsu. It wasn't an easy feat, and if he got the hang of it, it would only make him stronger. They all nodded and left him alone. It seemed this would work out. Eventually Naruto found himself wandering the village when he heard a very familiar voice behind him. Hey, if it isn't the brat. It was male. Naruto turned around and was surprised to see none other than Jiraiya of the Sannin. He quickly grabbed the handle of his sword and prepared to defend himself. What do you want, Ero Sennin? Naruto asked bluntly. Jiraiya quickly put his hands up in a surrender motion. Naruto calmed down and waited for his answer. I'm not here to bring you back. Actually, that old hag wanted me to come here personally and see how you're doing. I have no ulterior motives, he said quickly. Naruto thought about it for a moment. I don't sense any lies or deceit in his words. the QB added. Naruto relented and spoke up. Very well, let's go find somewhere to talk, he said. Jiraiya nodded and followed him. Eventually they were sitting by a river outside of Kumo. Just in case Jiraiya tried anything, he would at least be able to go all out and not destroy a part of Kumo. So what do you want to know? He asked. Jiraiya looked at him for a second. First, how come Kumo? He asked quickly. Naruto chuckled and explained. After I escaped from Suna, I had to make a choice, and Kumo was the least dangerous one for me. Kiri is obviously a very dangerous place to go. I hear it's very bloodthirsty over there. I didn't think IWA would like the son of the Yellow Flash over there, knowing how much damage my father did on the battlefield to their forces. He explained. Jiraiya blinked. This was Naruto? This couldn't be right. Man, you have changed. He chuckled. Naruto looked at him as he continued. The old you wouldn't plan this far ahead in the game. It's no wonder those two teams lost easily. I heard you used some very dirty tactics, he said. Naruto just shrugged. Jiraiya decided it was time to ask another question. How are you? Personally, don't give me the abridged version either, he asked seriously. Naruto sighed and began to speak. I'm really happy, and excited to see how this will turn out. I've finally broken out of the cage, and moved on from everything that I had left. I don't get looked at like I'm a demon here. This is a chance for a new start, a new life. I'm going to make the best of it, he said softly. Jiraiya listened intently as he continued. I've already gotten on good terms with the Raikage and made a deal with him, he continued. Jiraiya was shocked. He interrupted Naruto as soon as he heard that. The Raikage? What deal did you make? He demanded. Naruto sighed and began to explain. I'm going to become a freelance mercenary. I've given my support to the Raikage in exchange for asylum and a few training sessions. I'm staying here for 2 weeks, then I'm going to head out, he explained. Jiraiya's eyes widened again. A freelance mercenary was something you didn't see too often. However, in Naruto's case, it could work out very well, and the world would be better off. Naruto did have a way to make friends with pretty much anyone. So now for a more business question. When do you think you'll return? He asked seriously. Naruto sighed and looked at him. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not going to walk in there all nonchalant and not expect a mass uproot of the whole place. I'm going to head to Suna first, so maybe after I'm done there I might drop in a night or two. I don't really know, he said softly. Jiraiya nodded and began to ask his next question. So how much stronger have you become? He asked. Naruto chuckled and replied. I'm going to be training with Dari, one of the Raikage's men. I'm gonna learn Kenjutsu and a right Unjutsu from him. Other than that, I've been training with the Kyuubi with my tailed forms, some Senjutsu practice. However, that is hard as can be. I've also started to use some tactics I've learned books, psychological warfare and other things that use deceit and stealth to win, he explained. Jiraiya blinked again as he heard the list. Damn, this kid went over the top. That's what he was thinking as he heard him. One piece caught his attention though. Senjutsu. Senjutsu? You're learning that on your own? He asked in disbelief. He knew how hard that was, and to hear the kid saying he was learning it on his own was something that he couldn't see happening. Yeah, I've only tried it a few times. I sensed the natural energies and used it to find a sleeping deer to kill it for food. Naruto chuckled. Jiraiya chuckled, but nonetheless he was utterly stupefied and shocked. Damn kid, you've come a long way from the little runt you were before. He snickered. Naruto just shook his head. Hey, you're right, he said softly. Jiraiya smiled as they sat, basking in the silence. It made Naruto content. Even if Jiraiya was a leaf ninja, he was still one of the people he wouldn't forget. No, there was no way he was going to abandon any of his true people, his precious people. Naruto was walking back towards the training ground. Jiraiya had already left, and Naruto needed to meet Dari to begin his training. He wondered what he was going to learn. As he arrived at the training grounds he was supposed to go to, he didn't see Dari yet. So he sat down and waited. About 15 minutes later he heard footsteps behind him and turned just in time to roll out of the way of a large sword. He looked to Dari to see him with a smirk. Humph, your instincts aren't too shabby. You may just be able to survive someone's attack if you are truly fighting, he said quickly. Naruto wondered what he meant. I can see by your face that you don't understand. Don't trust anyone to fight you with their true strength. Most of the time they play around and hold back. That is until you give them a reason to fight seriously, he explained. Naruto nodded and listened as he started again. That was most likely the case with Kisame. He underestimated you and he paid the price. The sword, Samehada, is very powerful. Hand it over, he said. That shocked Naruto. He was going to train him, right? He quickly thought. Darui saw his expression and explained. Naruto turned to see him holding a wooden sword, a kendo stick to be exact. You want me to train with that? Naruto deadpanned. Darui smirked and nodded. Naruto sighed and relented. Handing over Samehada, he switched it out with the wooden sword. Darui motioned for him to follow him. As they walked a little ways they came across a target. This dummy will suffice for now. I'm going to show you a stance that Samehada would be wielded as. Practice with the wooden sword for a good bit, and we will move on, he said. Naruto watched as he got into a Kenjutsu stance. Naruto quickly copied it. Darui looked over to him and nodded. Good, now practice a few slashes and swings to get a basis of how you would swing Samahata in this stance, Darui said. Darui sat back as Naruto started. Over the hour that he was doing it, Naruto learned pretty quickly. Of course there was some errors and Darui helped him with them. Eventually it was time for Darui to start something else. Okay, I got a question for you. Who was your Jonin instructor for your Genin team? He asked. He saw Naruto's eyes narrow as he sighed. Kakashi Hatake. He spat. Darui was surprised, for multiple reasons. One, he had the Kakashi Hatake, who was obvious a very famous nin for his abilities. The other reason was he seemed to loathe the man. Okay, besides the fact you had the Kakashi Hatake as your Jonin, why do I get the sense you hate every fiber of the man? He asked seriously. Naruto sighed and looked to the skies. He knew it was time to tell his story a bit more in depth. When I told the Raikage of my reasons for leaving the village, it was more like an abridged version. In reality there was a lot more that built up and made me accept the Kyuubi's deal easier, he said softly. Darui was taken back by his tone. He knew now that it was serious. He sat down and listened as Naruto continued. It all started when one of my teammates, Sasuke Uchiha, defected from the village to gain power from Orochimaru. He started. Darui's eyes widened. He knew the name Uchiha. For a member of their legacy to defect to Orochimaru was something very stupid to do. Orochimaru was a conniving bastard who would take advantage of anyone. Also the fact he was his teammate, he knew Naruto had felt pain for what happened. He started to understand where this was going. It was when I vowed to bring him back to the leaf that it all started to turn sour. My other teammate, Sakura Haruno, was a little fangirl and begged me to do it. In the end it was Chidori versus a Rasengan that sent us both back to the leaf covered in injuries. In the end both Kakashi and Sakura sided against me, saying I shouldn't have used that much lethal force to bring him back. He explained. Darui was shocked. It was one thing to promise to return your teammate who had already defected, but it was another thing for the same person you did it for to completely turn their back on you. He understood now why he hated the man. Okay, I can see now why you feel the way you do. I won't push any further. Tell me, what did the man teach you? He said suddenly. Naruto shrugged and explained. Nothing much. At the time of the Chunin exams, he ditched me for Sasuke. I was trained then by Jiraiya. Naruto explained. Darui's eyes widened again. Jiraiya? The Sannin? He quickly thought, stupefied. He quickly shook of his thoughts and spoke up again. You learned chakra control, right? He deadpanned. Naruto nodded with a chuckle. Good, the sword Samahata saps at your chakra, and with the Jinchuriki's large chakra reserves it would help if you had better control. However, since we only have 2 weeks to get you ready for when you leave, we're gonna take a shortcut, he said suddenly. Naruto raised an eyebrow and listened as he continued. Your shadow clones will transmit experience to you when they are dispelled. So if you had clones work on chakra control exercises, you'd learn it a lot faster. Then we'd have more time to practice Kenjutsu and the right Unjutsu, he explained. Naruto nodded and made the familiar hand seal. With a quick shout a whole group of clones appeared. Darui was impressed at the amount. He counted at least 30. It was about an hour later and Darui decided it was time to move on to something new. Okay, it's time to move on, Naruto. I'm gonna teach you a right Unjutsu that will help you out. It's a fairly basic jutsu, but with practice and skill it can be very deadly, he suddenly said. Naruto stopped and looked at him. He quickly nodded and listened as Darui continued to explain. It's called right Un, Jibashi. It allows the user to shoot a wave of electricity through their hands. Its power ranges from small surges to larger amounts that can easily incapacitate an opponent if it hits, he explained. Naruto nodded and watched as Darui went through a quick set of hand seals and shot off a short wave of electricity. Naruto widened his eyes, sure it was a small wave. However, he knew it could have more applications than what others thought. Okay, now you try, Darui said. Naruto nodded and went through the same hand seals, and sure enough he soon shot off a wave of electricity. It was about an average-sized wave. Good job, now just keep practicing on what we did today for the rest of the week. After that, we will start to work with Samahata, he said. Naruto nodded and continued to train. Scene break. 2 weeks later. The 2-week period quickly had passed by and Naruto had gotten surprisingly good at Kenjutsu. Darui was honestly shocked at how much he learned in such a short time. Even his right Unjutsu was fairly good. Not to mention his combat skills had dramatically improved by a large margin. However, Darui had one last test for Naruto to pass. If he did, then Darui was sure Naruto would be fine on his own. Naruto currently found himself sitting down in the middle of the training ground. He was told to come here a little bit later for some reason. However, he decided to come at the usual time and use it to practice Senjutsu. As Naruto sat down on the ground, he started to feel 4 chakra signatures. They were familiar. He turned to see Darui, the Raikage, B and Yujito. They were all here, probably here to see him off. However, a part of him knew there was something else. You wanted to see me? Naruto asked curiously. Darui nodded and spoke up. I have a final test for you to pass. If you do, I have no doubt you will be ready, he said. Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked the obvious question. What test? He asked curiously. Darui looked serious for a moment before speaking up. A sparring match, me and you. Use everything you have. I will not hold back. Darui said loudly. Naruto was surprised, however. He grinned nonetheless and got into a stance. Come at me when you're ready, he said loudly. Darui chuckled. The Reikage got a smirk on his face as he watched Darui walk forwards and get into a stance as well. He truly wondered what the battle would be like if Darui and Naruto both went all out and didn't hold anything back. He was watching closely. Yujito was doing the same. They all watched as Darui suddenly covered his body lightning and vanished from his spot and charged at Naruto with insane speeds. Naruto only had a split second to duck and rolled out of the way as Darui pressed on him. It seemed Darui was starting off with taijutsu. Naruto had to admit, with the speed he was utilizing, it was very hard to predict his movements and adapt accordingly. It seemed endless. Every time Naruto would dodge, Darui just kept on pressing him onwards. It seems Naruto's only way to counteract Darui's taijutsu is with his own reaction time, however it's not going to work forever, Yujito said suddenly. Both B and the Reikage turned to her. The Reikage turned back to the battle and gave a huff. It seemed she was right. He couldn't dodge forever. He'd eventually slip up and pay the price. The question was, just how would Naruto get past this obstacle? They all thought. Back in the fight, Naruto's mind was going hyperdrive, thinking of any way he could possibly slow or completely stop Darui, so that he could get a chance to launch a counterattack. He only had a few ideas he could try. One, he could match Darui's speed with the Kyuubi's chakra. However, if he did that, he would most likely be using it for a long period of time, which would only drain him of chakra. He needed to conserve every ounce he could. He had no doubt this battle would go on for quite some time. However, he knew it would be the most effective way to stop Darui currently. Darui stopped for a second as he saw Naruto close his eyes and form a seal. He realized what he was doing and watched as the chakra rose around Naruto like a wildfire. The Kyuubi's chakra, Yujito said in awe. The Reikage watched closely as Naruto was covered in the demonic chakra. It seems different. He has no tails, he said quickly. B was the one to speak up. Not tailed state, it's pure chakra innate, he said. Yujito nodded as the Reikage listened to him. I wonder what he is planning? Yujito asked. The Reikage smirked and spoke up. We'll just have to wait and see, he said. The three of them turned their attention towards the battle as Naruto finished summoning the Kyuubi's chakra and was covered, head to toe in it. Naruto wasn't done though. The Reikage was the first to notice it. Is that sparks coming off the chakra? He asked suddenly. Everyone took a close look at it, and was surprised to see it too. Yes, I think so, but what is it? Yujito added. B shook his head. He had no idea. I have no clue. Whatever it is has no sense of deja vu, B said quickly. The Reikage smirked and waited to see what Naruto would do. Suddenly Naruto's whole body erupted with golden-orange fire that seemed to roar with newfound life. This was obvious to everyone that it was something he didn't show yet. The Reikage smirked as he knew this was something Naruto hid under his sleeve until the time was right. This was a very deadly combo, especially with Naruto's trickster personality. The Reikage was seriously impressed by the kid's thinking. He didn't want to show all his cards at once. He had no doubt in his mind that Naruto had more to show. As Darui looked at Naruto now, it was obvious he was a little apprehensive. It only increased his shock as Naruto quickly formed the same hand seal he'd seen before so many times from Naruto himself. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto shouted. Suddenly clones poofed into existence. However, they had the same chakra covering them with the fire light. Darui counted 8 clones currently. He knew Naruto could make a ton more. He smirked as he knew Naruto was being careful as well. All the Narutos suddenly charged. They were fast though. It seemed with the Kyuubi's chakra he could match Darui's speed. Quickly Darui ducked a fist from a clone aimed at him. Darui quickly delivered a roundhouse to the clone and watched as it poofed into smoke. It was a full frontal assault on him. Darui quickly realized that. He knew with clones coming at him it would be only a matter of time before he got hit, then Naruto would have a window to follow up on it. However, there was a problem. That fire. He didn't know what capabilities it had. It was obvious to Darui that it wasn't a Katan Jutsu, so that meant that it was very versatile right off the bat. He had to watch carefully. Suddenly 2 clones charged as 2 more followed behind them. Darui quickly took out his sword and sliced through the first one that came near him. However, the 3 left circled around him. He was surrounded. Suddenly he felt a large rise in heat. He quickly looked up to see Naruto himself launch a fireball at close range. It seemed whatever that fire was, Naruto had gotten good with it. It was obvious he was practicing quite a bit. Darui had only one choice. He quickly held his sword above his head and blocked the fireball, but he left himself open. That was all that needed to happen. As the clones charged in and delivered 3 punches to him, he grunted as the clones' punches connected. He gazed around to see more clones coming at him. It was time. No more holding back. The Reikage saw what Darui was doing and smirked. He wondered how Naruto would handle that. Darui quickly formed a hand seal as he prepared to use a jutsu. Naruto saw this and instantly felt the rise in chakra. Raitun, Kurapansa! Darui shouted. Suddenly all the clones disappeared as a black lightning formed around Darui and a black panther came charging out towards the clones, eating them up like they were nothing but candy. Naruto quickly dashed back and pulled out Samahada. He quickly unraveled the bandages covering it. Using the sword now? Darui thought quickly. Naruto quickly swung it forwards and the blade curved and struck the panther, and easily split it in two. Naruto, however, knew that Darui wasn't done yet. He quickly got on guard as Darui pulled out his sword too. Naruto smirked as he realized what was about to happen. A clash of kenjutsu. Both of them charged forwards with a ton of speed as a burst of wind erupted from the clashing blades. Each other them pressing hard to gain an advantage. Darui quickly twirled around and tried to sweep Naruto off his feet. Naruto, however, saw what was coming and jumped backwards. While he was midair, he let Samahata stretch as it came towards Darui like a spear. Darui quickly rolled out of the way and watched as the blade's tip struck the ground, kicking up a ton of debris. Darui decided to take it up another notch. He gripped his sword tightly and lightning started to cover it. He suddenly charged once again towards the spot Naruto would land. Naruto quickly landed in a crouched position as Darui closed in on him. He quickly fed Samahata the demonic chakra he was using and it grew to considerable size and Naruto charged forwards with it aimed at Darui's blade. Both of them clashed again. However, with Samahata's increased size it made Naruto have more power on his side, versus Darui's lightning-covered sword. Naruto started to press harder, as Darui felt he weighed on top of him as he bended backwards. Naruto was easily overpowering him with the sword. Darui made one last effort, and pushed every ounce of strength into it, and pushed back on Naruto. Darui decided to push the two swords sideways to let a window open where he could strike. With Naruto's hands occupied with his sword, he had no way to block the incoming kick Darui sent his way. Naruto instantly felt the power behind it, as he skidded backwards. The kid is doing really well against Darui, the Raikage said suddenly. Yujito nodded and spoke up. I didn't expect Naruto to last this long, honestly. No doubt Naruto is starting to pull out all the stops, she said quickly. B nodded and added his thoughts. A true wonder like none other, he said softly. The Raikage nodded to both of their statements, and turned his attention back to the battlefield, with a single thought in his mind. How would it end? None of them had that answer though, they just had to wait and see. Naruto knew Kenjutsu wasn't going to be the way to win this. Darui was just too experienced in that style. So he had to use something else, something he couldn't counter easily. That left one option, the tailed forms. However, there was a problem. He wouldn't be able to use it that much, since he already used a good bit of his own chakra and the Kyuubi's. He wasn't going to last that long in a tailed form before he reverted out of it. He knew he needed to increase his reserves, but that would come at a later date. It was either the tailed forms or a test of endurance, which Naruto had no doubt in his mind that Darui would win. It was obvious, he was Kyuumo ninja. They were obviously stronger than most, and not to be underestimated. He quickly stabbed Samahata in the ground and prepared. Naruto quickly called on all the chakra he could muster. As he finally felt himself reach the limit, he knew it was time. It seems this fight is going to end soon, Yujito said suddenly. The Raikage looked to her as she spoke again. He's calling on all the chakra he can muster, you can tell by the slowed breathing. He's almost exerted himself of his chakra. He's going to attempt a last effort to end this once and for all, she said quickly. The three of them looked to see Naruto standing still as his eyes were closed. Suddenly his chakra bubbled and liquefied as three tails formed. As his eyes opened, the pupils were sharper and more animalistic. Darui knew now this was going to be the last attack. Naruto was coming with every ounce of strength he had left. Darui smirked, and knew he had to do the same to match it. Suddenly one of the tails grabbed the handle of Samahata and pulled it out, and wielded it. The chakra seemed to make it stronger, as it absorbed the demonic chakra slowly. Everyone was shocked at seeing that. It seemed the Kyuubi's chakra could act on its own, without Naruto controlling it. It was a very deadly combo as they realized the possibilities. Suddenly Naruto held out one hand and started to form a Rasengan. This was going to be the end. He was going to make sure of it. Either Darui would have to dodge the Rasengan or Samahata. He couldn't dodge the other though. Naruto was sure of that. It seemed Darui noticed it too. He smirked as he understood the situation. It was good fight. Naruto had already passed. It was time to finish it. Both of them charged. Brimming with extreme amounts of power, they both used everything they had left. As Naruto neared Darui, the tail swung Samahata. However, Darui chose to block it with his own sword. The sword would do a lot of damage. However, the Rasengan could be contained if he the chance. With his free hand, Darui covered his hand in the black lightning. He was intending to have his free hand take the blow of the Rasengan. With it covered his black lightning, it would take some of the damage. When both jutsus met, it was enormous. Both of them were pushing on each other. However, one needed to give. The Rasengan would explode soon. Darui knew that. It was only a matter of time, and it did. The blast repelled both of them backwards into the ground. The three on the sidelines rushed in to see the damage. They pulled Darui up to see his arm blackened as the Rasengan did more than he thought. Damn, that hurt, Darui muttered. They all chuckled and helped him up. Let's check on Naruto, Yujito said quickly. They all nodded and walked over to see Naruto crawling out of the hole he made. It seemed the chakra cloak absorbed most of the damage. Except for the fact of his chakra exhaustion, he was otherwise fine. Damn kid, you got balls, the Raikage said loudly. Naruto let out a chuckle and stood up. So how was that? He asked Darui. Darui chuckled and spoke up. You're ready, was all he said. Before anyone knew it, They had medical shinobi healing both of them. Soon they were standing at the gates of Kumo watching Naruto's fading image walking forwards towards his next destination, Suna. The journey from Kumo to Suna was a very long one. No doubt about it whatsoever. So there was no point in rushing the trip at all. Naruto was casually walking along the road towards his destination, however he wasn't stupid. He had his guard up the whole time. He wasn't going to let himself get ambushed by him making a foolish mistake. So what's your plan? You can't just waltz into the village and request an audience with the council. With the Kazekage recently dying, there's no doubt in my mind that Suna is on extreme guard to any deceit or lies. Especially with them knowing about you already. That's what your former teammate and sensei was there for after all, the Kyuubi said suddenly. Naruto cursed as he realized the fox was right. It would be extremely foolish to expect them to believe him that easily. He'd need some proof. He knew it wouldn't be easy though. This time you're on your own. You have to learn to do things like this on your own. Think of it as your next lesson. You need to get them to believe you're the son of the Yondaime Hokage, he said suddenly. Naruto went wide-eyed, then chuckled, but nonetheless he nodded. It was a challenge to him, and he'd gladly accept it. Bring it on. However, that left him with the question of how he would do that. It was obvious they would need a push. So that left him with a few options. 1. He could use the tailed forms and easily show them he was the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. However, that left him wondering how would they take it. It could have a good effect or a bad one. That left him with his other option. It wasn't as risky as the first one. However, it was something personal, and it could prove risky in the future. It was washing out the hair dye and returning to his natural hair color. If he did that, he would no doubt look like a younger Minato, and the resemblance would be easy enough to see. Also, it left him open to being recognized a lot easier. However, there was another part of him that said fuck it and let them come. They'd see later that he wasn't someone to be messed with. So he quickly got up and walked into a nearby forest, and walked towards the sound of rushing water. He soon came upon a river, and sat down by it. If anyone were around the area, they would see him dunk his head underwater as the river rushed through his hair as it washed it out, and carried it downstream. Slowly, but surely, the black hair dye faded and Naruto's original blonde hair came into view as he whipped his head back out of the river. However, as he pulled himself on the bank, he noticed something that alarmed him. His spiky blonde hair had red tips. He quickly blinked and rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't imagining it. Kyuubi, what is this? He asked quickly. Naruto took a piece of the hair and pulled it down to eye level. Sure enough, the tips were red. Due to your use of my chakra as much as we have been using, its influence will have some effects on your appearance. This is the beginning, however this is something to be expected, and it doesn't have any negative effects either. He heard the Kyuubi explain. Naruto raised an eyebrow as he heard him. What can I expect? He asked quickly. The Kyuubi was silent for a good bit before replying. More pronounced features, such as sharper canines and nails, nothing too crazy. Some changes will take longer to happen. The more you use the chakra and the tailed forms, the stronger the influence it gives. Which in turn drives the changes to happen a lot quicker. The Kyuubi said. Naruto wondered for a second of what else could happen. I'm not going to suddenly grow a tail or two, am I? He asked quickly. The Kyuubi chuckled and spoke. No, nothing like that. That would only happen if we decided to merge. The Kyuubi said quickly. Naruto looked confused after hearing that. Merge? What do you mean? He asked suddenly. The Kyuubi was silent again for a bit. In dire situations, in order to save a host's life, the Bijou can preform a process that would merge the two's souls together, resulting in the host becoming the Bijou themselves afterwards. It is cases like this that require such a cautioned amount of thinking to them, due to the fact that the process cannot be reversed. He explained. Naruto shook his head and stood up. There was nothing he could do about it. It was pointless to try to avoid something he had no control over. He learned that the hard way already. Now it was time for more important matters, getting to Suna. That was a very long distance to travel from where he was. What's your plan? The Kyuubi asked suddenly. He knew something was going off in Naruto's mind. I know for a fact it's going to be a long journey to go. I'm not even a quarter away from Kumo. I'm not about to do this the same way. I'm not as stupid to know now that word would start to travel. It will soon come full circle. People will eventually find me, and I'll most likely have to fight them off. Everyone will want me for ulterior plots, he quickly thought. The Kyuubi snorted, but it had a sort of amusement behind it. You need to find somewhere you can rest upon in the wilderness. You have no idea how long many days you will be stretching in these journeys. Make it a safe house of sorts. It would be wise to say that you cannot rely on Kumo to provide you with a sudden need of a place to stay. This way you'd have a hideout you could lie low. Heck, make a few more across the elemental nations. The Kyuubi said suddenly. Naruto looked up at that thought. It was a pretty good idea too. He also had something else he wanted to do. He got a big grin on his face as he started to think about it. If he did it right, and got away successfully, which he had good faith that he could do it easily, it was something to him to test his stealth. The Kyuubi was silent as it picked up on his thoughts. He wondered what he was up to. What are you thinking of, boy? You've clearly got something plotted in that head of yours. I can tell by that devious grin you have on your face. The Kyuubi said suddenly. Naruto stopped for a second and chuckled. Scene break, Konoha. Tsunade waited for Jiraiya to come. She received word that he just arrived at the gate. Before she knew it, the Sannin had quickly arrived and opened the door and stepped in. He didn't really feel like making any grand entrance. He knew what this meeting was about. He did have a lot to tell as well, so it was better to get it over with. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya with an expectant face. She definitely wanted news. She hoped it was good too. So what did you learn? She asked quickly. Jiraiya smiled and sat down. I learned quite a bit. I will say the boy's personality has changed quite a bit. He started off. That made Tsunade raised an eyebrow as she was confused. Changed? How so? She asked quickly. Jiraiya sighed and began to explain. He has made a complete 180 change. You wouldn't even recognize him if you saw him. His whole appearance is changed. The only reason I was able to know it was him was the fact I could sense the fox's chakra. He's observant, cunning and clever. He started. That took Tsunade for a loop. Explain. Was all she said. Jiraiya took a serious expression now. The boy has been training hard. I can tell he's leagues above what most people would assume. For starters, he has Samahata. He also has been learning senjutsu on his own. He's learned quite a bit. He managed to make a deal with the Reikage to train him, in exchange for his service as a freelance mercenary. He explained. That shocked Tsunade completely. Being a freelance mercenary was very risky. If Naruto could successfully pull it off, he would change everything. Judging by the look of Jiraiya's face, there was something else. What else is there? She asked quickly. Jiraiya looked solemn for a moment. He said he'd return eventually. Something about needing to take care of something. He said. That shocked Tsunade again as she digested his words. Are you sure? She asked suddenly. Jiraiya nodded as Tsunade sighed and had a sad smile on her face. She knew it would be a good bit before she saw him again. Jiraiya had a serious expression as he started to speak. What of the council? How are things going on? There has to be some kind of backlash as the secret finally reached the public. He said quickly. Tsunade sighed and looked at him. The council is demanding I try everything I can to bring him back. However, I know it is best to leave him be. We can't risk antagonizing him. If he was smart enough to defeat Asuma's and Kurina's teams with an ambush, imagine what he will be able to do that a few weeks ago. Imagine a few months or a year, he surely wouldn't hesitate anymore, she said softly. Jiraiya put his hand to his chin as he thought about it. Any of the conniving little bastards try anything? He asked suddenly. Jiraiya knew how the people viewed Naruto. His image among the populace wasn't good. There is one I might have a problem with, Danzo. He would be the most likely to act on his own. Knowing his moniker of Shinobi of Darkness, she said suddenly. Jiraiya scowled at the mention of the man. He knew all too well what the ex-commander was like. No man or woman in their right mind should trust the bastard. If he would try something in an attempt to get Naruto, how would the boy react? That is what he was thinking. That bastard would be the one to do something fishy. My question is, would he underestimate the boy like everyone else? He suggested quickly. Tsunade was silent after hearing that. If Danzo does let arrogance and pride blind him of the situation, he will most likely regret it, she said quickly. Jiraiya nodded and knew it was true. Danzo wasn't someone to act without hesitation or rush thoughts. He was decisive and cunning. He probably heard about the two teams' failures and realized Naruto was suddenly growing stronger. Soon enough, that he would be able to stand against him, if the need arose. Boy, would that be a sight to see. Naruto was surely growing beyond anyone's perceptions of his strength. That fact was proved alone with his change. There was no doubt in his mind that they would soon be seeing the rebirth of the Yellow Flash. He had no idea just how true that statement really was. Is Root still active? Jiraiya asked suddenly. Tsunade was silent after hearing that. Any shinobi with a single brain cell regarding Konoha's history knew that name. It was officially disbanded by Hiruzen during his position as third Hokage. However, there are some reports and questions stating it continues to operate hidden. Danzo is still most likely the leader of it, she said softly. Jiraiya groaned as he heard her statement. It was most likely true. He knew how conniving and shady the man was. After all, he wasn't known as the Shinobi of Darkness for nothing. That was a fact, simple as that. He decided he would need to keep a closer eye on him with his spy network to see what was going on. Well, I'll keep an eye on him with my spy network. You should do the same. I'll let you know if I find anything, or if Naruto does something new, he said suddenly. Tsunade nodded with a sigh and watched as the Sannin vanished with a shunshin. She then leaned back in her chair as she sighed with contempt. Her day wasn't over yet. No, not by a long shot at all. She still had to meet with the council, and she knew it wasn't going to be pretty. It was time to show them who really held the power in the village. Before anyone knew it, she had left the Hokage Tower and started on her way towards the meeting place. She mentally prepared herself for what this meeting would entail. She knew without a shred of doubt that it would definitely get heated at one point. She soon found herself pushing open the doors to the meeting room. Inside the room was a small table with 4 chairs. The meeting with the civilian council was about to begin. Danzo, Hamura and Koharu were all waiting for her to arrive. Welcome, Lady Tsunade, Koharu said in a snide tone. It was obvious to Tswanda that the woman didn't like her very much and disagreed with her actions towards Naruto. It was a well-known fact that most of the elders in the village still didn't like Naruto and saw him as the demon brat. She knew now, with his heritage revealed, things were going to be very different. However, she knew they wouldn't get anywhere. I assume we all know what this meeting is about, so let's get straight to the point, Tsunade said quickly. The rest of them just huffed or scoffed at her statement. Why do you hide the boy's lineage? Hamura asked quickly. Tsunade scoffed and spoke up. This whole village hated Naruto for being the Jinchuriki for most of his life. I wasn't going to jeopardize his situation anymore by revealing his true parentage. You seem to forget the fact Minato sealed the Kyuubi in his son. It would only be more harmful than good, she said swiftly. Danzo scoffed then chuckled. Yet he had acted on his own will many times. What did that prove? We know the brat was able to survive on his own, he said loudly. Tsunade glared at him. Koharu decided to speak up. Let's get past the trivial stuff. We must get him back to the village. What have you done to try to get him to return? She asked quickly. Tsunade laughed loudly. Oh, you're mistaken. I'm not going to do anything, she said in a mocking tone. Hamura glared and shouted out. Why not? You know the power the boy has. Combined with his heritage, he will only grow further. He slammed his fist on the table as he raged. Tsunade shook her head and glared at him. He left on his own accord, and you seem to forget the fact the village despised him for the longest time. You really think he'd return? I'm not going to strain any relationship I currently have with him by trying to force him to return. That would be foolish and would only push him further away, she said loudly. Their eyes widened as they heard her tone. It was one of finality. Nothing more to be said about the matter, or there would be consequences. However, Tsunade knew they would still push her. You say this, yet you know the gravity of the situation. Word spreads fast throughout the elemental nations. He's technically up for grabs for anyone, Danzo said quickly. Tsunade smirked and spoke up. We both know what you want, Danzo. You want a weapon that is effective without question. You are right when you say I know of the gravity of the situation. However, I know more than you. Word does spread fast, and I can personally assure you that Naruto's situation is out of our hands. Nothing we do can bring him back, she said loudly. The three of them narrowed their eyes. What do you mean? Koharu asked quickly. Tsunade chuckled and began to prepare to drop the bomb on them. She knew, however, that she needed to be careful. Danzo was more likely now to try something, so she had to be careful and not give him anything to go on. I had Jiraiya travel recently to Kumo, where we know Naruto was currently. His mission was a personal one, to gather info and report back to me, she started. They all widened their eyes. Danzo seemed to have a hungry look in his eyes. Damn bastard, you're foolish to think you'll be able to do anything, Tsunade thought quickly. What did he learn? Hamura asked quickly. She chuckled and began to speak again. He told me that the boy has changed considerably. He had foregone his personality and adapted to a new one. This one is very dangerous and conniving. The first thing Jiraiya said to me was it was a 180 change and you wouldn't recognize him. The fact of the matter is he is no longer the Naruto Uzumaki you people think you knew, she continued. They all started to chuckle and laughed. Please? You really believe that the demon brat, who was the dead last of the academy, who also failed the exam more than once, that this boy is completely different? Koharu asked in a snide tone. They all chuckled even more. You must realize that the statement is made up, right? Surely Jiraiya said that to cover up for his failure of a student. Hamura added in an arrogant tone. Tsunade's eyebrows started to twitch as her anger rose. She was going to be nice and lay it on them easily and smooth. Not anymore though. It was time to drop the whole fucking bomb on them at once. Really, you are all stuck in the past. You seem to forget that he not only proved this village wrong on multiple occasions. I remember the report of the two teams that failed to bring him back. The ambush he devised was something to be remembered for sure. To take both of the team's strengths and weaknesses and use them against them to completely send them home with 4 people unconscious is a feat alone. I remember them saying he had Samahada, the legendary sword of Kisame Hashigaki, who evidently made a mistake and paid the ultimate price. Not to mention that failure of a student you guys seem to believe him as, happened to make a deal with the Raikage, in which he got many things out of it, all for his support as a freelance mercenary, training with one of the Raikage's personal shinobi and asylum there. It's obvious the boy has grown beyond anyone's imagination, she spat out. She took some sadistic pleasure in seeing the utter shock and stupefied expressions that their faces took. She got the message through, however she wasn't done yet. I will not force him back. He will return only if he wants to, she said with authority. None of them had any words. They all looked up suddenly as Tsunade got up. This meeting is over. There will be no more discussions on this matter. That is final, she said. She swiftly turned around and stormed out of the room, leaving a shocked council in her wake. However, she knew there was always going to be problems. That was inevitable. But she'd be damned if she didn't do everything in her power to stop them. She owed him that much. Tsunade currently awoke with a raging headache and a hangover. It had been a few days since the council meeting was done, and she wasn't done yet. It was time to deal some punishments. The council be damned. She quickly had Anbu bring Sakura and Sasuke. Kakashi would be taken care of later. The moment they both arrived in the tower, they knew they were in deep shit with her. Just by her face as they walked in the door, it was all they needed. Tsunade quickly ushered the ANBU out of the room and began to speak. You two have been the cause of all my problems as of the late, and at high time someone told you off. What were you two thinking? She shouted at the end. Sasuke just rolled his eyes as he heard her. Sakura looked terrified at hearing that. As of now, Sasuke Uchiha, the whole Uchiha library is donated to the public library instead, she stated. Sasuke growled as he heard that and glared at her. You think you can do this? I'm the last of the clan, he shouted in protest. Tsunade slammed her arms on the desk as she stood up. Listen up, brat. You being a Uchiha doesn't mean jack shit. I don't give a damn about your clan, he said loudly. He flinched, he heard her tone. But you can't do that to Sasuke, Sakura shouted. Tsunade glared at her. You lady need to keep your mouth shut, you're next, she said. That's when Sakura glared at her tone. Because of you girl, Naruto is gone. I'm no longer teaching you anything and you have a 1-month suspension, she shouted. Sasuke just glared at her. Sakura felt fear from her. What is your problem, bitch? Sasuke said loudly. Tsunade glared at the boy. You're going to Tianai, boy. Best prepare for a fun time there, she said quickly. He looked at her with a fierce glare. You can't do that. I'm an Uchiha, he shouted in protest. Tsunade glared at him. An Uchiha? Like I give a damn. You defected to Orochimaru to gain power for revenge. You're lucky I'm not ordering your incarceration, she said loudly. Sasuke slammed his fist on her desk and glared at her. ANBU, escort him out and to Ibiki Marino, please, she said loudly. Suddenly 2 figures appeared with masks and grabbed Sasuke by his arms. Oh, and I personally request Enko Mitarashi to interrogate him, she said suddenly. The 2 shivered as they heard that name. They knew who she was. They also knew how sadistic she could be. Sasuke Uchiha would not have a fun day at all with her. Bring on you, bitch. Whoever that whore is, she can kiss my ass. She won't get shit from me, Sasuke shouted angrily. The 2 ANBU's eyes widened under their masks. If Enko heard that, Sasuke might not like what she'd do. Sasuke glared at Tsunade, kicking and screaming as he was dragged out of there. Sakura glared at Tsunade as she watched what happened. How could you do that? She shouted. Tsunade glared at her again. You have no right to say anything about this matter. Sasuke Uchiha abandoned Konoha to gather power in a pursuit of blind rage. He's lucky he didn't get put in a cell the moment he arrived in the village, she said loudly. Sakura just looked down as she heard Tsunade. I am hereby disbanding Team 7, following your 1-month suspension. You, Sasuke and Kakashi might get a second chance, she said. Sakura looked up at her with tears. Why am I the one getting the punishment? She screeched. Tsunade shut her up with her glare. You're not the only one. Sasuke will have more done later to him. Kakashi isn't even here yet for me to discuss his punishment, she said quickly. Sakura looked at her and went to speak up, however, she was cut off by Tsunade. That is all. There is nothing more to say, you have been warned. Any further disobedience will result in more severe punishment, she said loudly. Sakura gulped and nodded meekly. She quickly scurried out of Tsunade's office. Back inside, Tsunade sighed as she prepared for the next part of her day. Umbu, she called. Suddenly 2 masked guards appeared and bowed before her. Hokage-sama, the leader of the 2 said. Tsunade sighed and began to speak. Bring me Kakashi Hatake, she ordered. They both nodded and vanished in a swirl of leaves, already on their way to complete the order. Before she knew it, Kakashi was standing in front of her. Ma, what's with the long face, Tsunade-sama? He said lazily. His eyes instantly widened when he saw her glare increase tenfold. Yup, he was in deep shit. He instantly straightened up and spoke in a respectful tone. Lay it on me. I know this is about punishment for the incident with Naruto. So let's skip the bullshit and get straight to the point, he said suddenly. Tsunade was a bit surprised by his sudden change in tone. He knew what this was about. That was good in her mind, however. She wasn't about to cut to the point and deliver his punishment. No, he needed to be thrashed a bit. You're damn right it's about that. Now, before we discuss your punishment, would you like to explain why you thought it was a good idea to criticize Naruto in making a decision that saved his life? She said suddenly. Kakashi was obviously not expecting that to come first. He sighed as he knew he wasn't going to get off that easy. I know I had no right, however. He used a Rasengan that was powered up by the Kyuubi. Sasuke could have died as well. It's my job as their sensei to instruct them, whether it's right or wrong, he said. Tsunade chuckled then spoke up. You were their sensei, she said. Kakashi blinked and spoke up. Excuse me? He asked confused. Tsunade glared at him and began to explain. As of now, what's left of Team 7 is disbanded. Sakura is on a month's suspension. Sasuke may never become a shinobi of the leaf again. It all depends on how these next few weeks play out for him. She started. Kakashi started to feel a gnawing sense of impending doom. As for you, since you deemed it necessary to barely teach Sakura or Naruto anything, in favor of the brat Uchiha, you are hereby ordered to help Irika Yumino in teaching at the academy for 1 month. She dropped the bomb. Kakashi's face quickly grew into an expression of pure horror. It was obvious that he clearly wasn't expecting her to say that at all. He couldn't believe what he heard from her. What? He sputtered out. Tsunade smirked and began to speak again. You heard me, and you better not even be late once. If you are, well, you might find those precious books of yours burned to a crisp. She said. Kakashi started to sweat badly. He knew when he was beaten. The look on Tsunade's face told him that much. She meant business, and no bullshit. Fine, you got me. I'll do as you say, he said quickly. Tsunade smirked and spoke again. You're damn right you will. Now get out of my sight, she said quickly. He nodded and vanished in a shunshin. She quickly called the ANBU again. Before she knew it, they had left, and Irika had appeared in her office. Hokage-sama? He asked, confused. She sighed and began to speak. You're not in trouble. I called you here to inform you of a recent event, she said. Irika's face grew somber as he realized it had to do with Naruto. What recent event? He asked quickly. Tsunade sighed and started to explain. With the recent incident with Naruto, I had recently delivered some punishments. Kakashi Hatake has been ordered to help teach you at the academy for 1 month. I made sure he wouldn't be late either, she said. Irika was instantly surprised, and a little worried. Are you sure it's a good idea to have him teach? He asked suddenly. Tsunade shook her head and spoke up. Not necessarily. I think he just needs some humiliation. Hopefully, after this he will learn to not repeat his mistakes he already made before, she said. Irika nodded after hearing her. Very well, I'm sure it will be fun to have him there for a good while, he said. Suddenly an ANBU barged into the room. Tsunade glared at the masked person who entered the room. Why have you interrupted me? She asked seriously. The ANBU cleared his throat and spoke. There is a problem, Hokage-sama, he said. Both Tsunade and Irika raised an eyebrow. What could be wrong? How little they knew, when they found out how drastic the effects were going to be. Nothing could prepare them for what was coming. Scene break. A few days earlier, Naruto had just entered the land of fire a few hours ago. The QB had yet to figure out what he was planning. He was intending on finding out now. So will you tell me what you're planning? He asked his host. Naruto chuckled and smirked. Well, let's say, if what I'm planning goes like I want it, I'll be even more powerful, and I'll be one step closer to having the power I need to prove people wrong, he replied. The QB didn't know what he meant. Spill it, was all he said. Naruto chuckled, but nonetheless nodded. We're an hour or two away from Konoha, and by the time we get there, it will be already dark, so most of the shinobis will have gone inside for the night. Only the ANBU will be patrolling. He started. The QB quickly interrupted him. What are you planning? He asked suddenly. Naruto chuckled again and explained. Simple, I'm going to break into the Namake's estate and grab some scrolls. Maybe raid the library, if they have one, he replied. The QB was silent for a good bit, then it burst out laughing. Damn, you're clever. Okay then, what's the full plan? You can't just barge into the estate, take some scrolls and leave without expecting someone trying to stop you, the QB said suddenly. Naruto nodded to his statement. He knew it was true. We're going to use the ANBU's patrol to our own advantage, he said quickly. The QB, once again, didn't know what he meant. How so? He asked. Naruto chuckled and began to explain. I know the ANBU's patrol like the back of my hand. After all, I had been running from them and escaping them since in my childhood. I easily know the alleyways and escape routes to take. On to the patrol. At any time, there is about 9 or 10 guards on patrol on the wall, to cover the whole thing, usually in pairs of 2, with a few odd pairs as well. Inside the village is a bit tougher, they are on top of the roofs. Now you might say that's a bit too risky. Usually it would, however, around midnight, the shifts change. So a window is opened as the guards change shifts. About 15 to 30 minutes precisely, he explained. The QB was silent for a while. So you plan to sneak your way in during the patrol, then escape during the shift change? What about a backup plan? What happens if you run into an unforeseen obstacle? He asked. Naruto sighed. The QB kept bringing up good points. A distraction and diversion? How about setting up a line of explosion tags on the outside wall? I'll have a few shadow clones waiting to be dispelled, and when I dispel one, the others will trigger the explosion tags, he said. The QB smirked when he heard that. Pretty clever too, he said. Naruto grinned and started to sprint as fast as he could towards the village. Before he knew it, he was atop the forest head on the Hokage monument. He quickly summoned a couple clones and gave each a stack of explosive tags. Each tag was connected by a fuse. It was something he rigged up the other night. He planned ahead for this. Okay, you guys know the drill. Set these up around the outside wall, he said. They all nodded and began to go to work. About half an hour later, the clones came back and told Naruto that it was done. Naruto then dispelled all of them, but 2. He then told them what to do. Right, when one of us dispels, the other will light the fuse, one of the clones said. Naruto nodded and turned to the setting sun. He was waiting for the time to move. Once it set, he would begin. He suddenly sat Samahata down by the clones. It would only get him caught if someone saw it on his back. He grinned, as the sun finally set. It was time to go to work. Looking back to see the clones sitting around by the fuses, waiting for the sign to light them, he slid down the monument and landed near the wall. He suddenly stopped as he heard footsteps above him. He quickly crouched into the bushes nearby to avoid being seen. The ANBU guards wouldn't stick around for long, they would continue the cycle. That would give Naruto about 5 or 10 minutes to get over the wall and dash into the village. Then he'd have to stick to the alleyways and use cover. Once he heard the footsteps above him start to go farther away, he waited a few moments and started to climb the wall pretty easily. As soon as he got on top of the wall, he quickly crouched and took a look around. He saw there were no ANBUs coming around this way yet. He knew they would soon, so he quickly jumped over the other side and landed in the tree limbs. It was now a matter of getting to the estate, without getting caught. He knew where the estate was, however it was a good bit away. He figured he had about an hour and a half before midnight, then the shifts would change. He needed to get in and gather what he wanted before then, so it was time to move. He quickly dropped down from the trees and dashed into the alleyway in front of him. The estate wasn't that far away, but he couldn't just go out in the open. No, he needed to take a detour and keep under the radar. He quickly ducked behind a dumpster as he heard more footsteps above him. Suddenly 2 guards dropped down into the alleyway. "Did you hear something?" one asked. Naruto held in his breath. "Kyuubi, can you mask my chakra signature? Just in case one of them is a censor," he asked the Kyuubi. He waited for a response. "I thought I heard something," the another guard said. Naruto hoped the Kyuubi was listening. "Okay, done." He finally heard. Finally the guards had left. Naruto waited a few moments again to reappear out from behind the dumpster. He decided to go straight towards for the estate. He couldn't play around here anymore. Before he knew it, he stood before the gates of the Namake's estate. He looked at the seal on the gate. It was relatively small. It had grooves that swirled around towards the middle. "That's a blood seal. Cut your hand and place it on the seal. Your blood will then open the gate," the Kyuubi said suddenly. Naruto nodded and used his nails that were sharper now to cut his palm open, and he quickly placed it on the seal. He sighed as he pulled his hand back and watched as the blood filled the grooves to the center. Suddenly the whole seal glowed and then it disappeared. The gates started to creak and spur to life as they were opened. He just stared in amazement as he walked up towards the door. He mentally prepared himself for what he was about to find. He knew it was going to be emotional. The tears were already falling. He opened the door and gasped as he saw the inside of the estate. Dust was everywhere, covering everything. It was obviously vacant for a good bit. However, how it looked shocked Naruto to his very core. He had no words as he walked around. Then something caught his eye. It was a medium-sized box on a table in the living room. With shaking hands he picked it up and looked at it. On an engraved plate, he could read to Naruto. He slowly opened the box and looked inside. There was a piece of paper, and under it was 2 scrolls. He looked at the note first. "Dear Naruto, if you're reading this, then we are no longer alive and you have been left alone. There is so much I want to say, with so little time. So I'll start with this. My name is Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage and your father. I'm sure you already know this, but we died on the night you were born, the day the Kyuubi attacked, and I'm sorry for the burden we've given you. As I've said before, there is so little time and so much I want to say. So I'll get on with it, and this box is essentially our wills. 1 scroll is from me and the other is from your mother. I leave you my 2 prize techniques, the Hiraishin and Rasengan. Hopefully you will be able to master both of them. I am sorry for not being there and I love you." Naruto had tears spilling out from reading the section from his father. He already knew the Rasengan, but the Hiraishin? That was something completely different and equally challenging to learn. His eyes rested on the next portion of the letter, the part from his mother. "Hello my son, this is your mother. I'm terribly sorry I'm not there to see you grow up. As Minato said, there is little time. My name is Kushina Uzumaki, a member of the Uzumaki clan of Whirlpool, or better known as Yuzushio. I would have loved to be there as you grew up and actually been a mother. I know your life must have been a harsh one and the Kyuubi must have most to do with it. We both are terribly sorry for what you have been burdened with, and we hope you can forgive us. In the scroll I gave you is my knowledge and seals. I hope you can go farther than both I and your father ever hoped. We both love you and wish you a wonderful life. Love, Minato and Kushina." Naruto finally broke down as the dam shattered and the tears flew out like a river. Eventually, after 15 minutes, his eyes were dry and he was standing up breathing slowly. "I will make you guys proud," he said loudly. He didn't have to think about it, he would. He decided it was time to leave. What they gave him was good enough. He took the 2 scrolls and the letter and put them in his jacket pockets and walked out the door. Turning back around, he looked at the estate one last time. As soon as he got on the road again, he started sprinting towards the wall again. He was ready to get to Suna. However, he heard someone behind him. "Stop!" It was a female. He turned to see a ANBU member. However, the mask was familiar. It was Nico. His eyes widened as he looked at the girl before him. "Who are you?" she asked. It was pitch dark, so she couldn't see his face. He didn't answer. He had no doubt she could tell it was him by his voice. "Not answering, huh? I guess I'll force it out," she said loudly. She quickly pulled out her sword and went into a stance. Shit, without Samahata. This wouldn't be easy at all for him, so it was time to improvise. No doubt, the moment he unleashed some jutsu, more guards would be here. So now it was time for the distraction and to take care of her. So, he dispelled the clone. The other knew what to do. Suddenly a large amount of explosions rocketed to the sky and Naruto knew that was enough. Nico was momentarily distracted, and he took that chance. Right-un, Jibashi, he said. A medium-sized wave soared towards Nico. It gave Naruto a chance to follow it up. He quickly started to form the familiar jutsu that everyone knew. He ran towards her and aimed it at the ground. Rasengan! He shouted. The Rasengan smashed into the ground, kicking up debris and dust, giving Naruto some cover. Before Nico knew it, a kick had sent her flying into a nearby wall. Fading into unconsciousness, she heard a soft voice right next to her. Sorry Nico, I had to do this, he said. She knew who it was. Naruto looked back to see the dust clouds from the explosion tags in the air. His distraction would give him a bit to get out and regroup with his clone. He started to sprint in the opposite direction of where the explosions were. His plan was complete. He got what he wanted. It was time to go.